Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Obviously, our guest for this one is going to be Bleh, who was a return guest. I actually have an interesting angle for you at the beginning here, Bleh, which is because, in many ways, this is our mate, because your whole thing, if people don't know, is you have been covering the Asian region of Counter-Strike for a very, very long time, obviously from CSGO onwards. And what people don't know, don't worry, I'm going to do a YouTube video on it soon I'm going to do a video where I sort of like give people the backstory of like those teams who like the Chinese and the Korean teams in 1.6. But basically, it is true. As long as we're saying CSGO forwards, like MongolZ is far and away the best team from this region. And obviously, actually the region itself has struggled to have like relevance in CS or even get a foothold in the game. So I understand why, in your case, it's totally legit. You'd be waiting for a team to come along. There was even the old Mongols back in the day people used to cheer for, etc., right? But people do this thing where if they just put that label like Asian CS, and I noticed the problem I have is they're trying to make it sound for real, guys. Like, yeah, Mongolia, China, you know, tomato, tomato. Like, at the end of the day, the Mongols got like the home crowd, and I want to just go like, bro, first of all, they did literally build that giant fucking wall. You pick which side to keep the other one out of their country. So I'm just going to say that's the like historical backdrop. But the question I had for you was this, Bleh. It's actually a specific one from me and you. It goes like this. A lot of people might not know this, but the reason also why I found just the term Asian is like a giant label so crazy when they use it almost like they were talking about like French people is because, bro, you know this, in the UK, because actually the main people we had who weren't from the UK were obviously Indian people. Actually, most people in the UK don't say, they say Asian for Indian people, actually, which is quite weird because I think Americans always think of like Chinese or Vietnamese or something. They don't think of Indian as Asian. Do you actually think, do people in India actually call India Asian? What is that actually? Is it a bracket within India? How do you guys think of it?
That's an interesting one. I don't think Indians in general, like they call themselves. I mean, they know we're from Asia, obviously the Doi, right? But it's always like, oh, it's a Chinese, Indians, you know, Pakistanis, whatever. Like they use or Southeast Asia. So I
sure,
guess,
right.
Yeah, right. So I've seen like Indians outside, like you know, we're Asians as well. You know, we're not Indians, it's just Asian doesn't mean Japanese and Chinese and South Koreans. I've had that argument. I mean, not argument. I had people.
Yeah, sure.
That. Yeah, but in general, like Indians, no, they consider themselves Asian with the Doi, right?
Do you think like are Indian fans riding with the Mongol story for the sake of like, obviously if you had your own team, I'm sure you'd be from there, but for the sake of not having them now, in the same way as the joke would be, I'll offer an olive branch. Obviously, the joke is if NA is completely irrelevant, Maui will just go like Americas, and you know you get in on Fury or some shit. That's okay. We all have to have someone to cheer for. Spoiler: I'm British, so like I'm cheering for any fucking British team. I'm suddenly anti-Brexit. I'm like, what you? Oh, Olaf, we're European, right, mate? So do you guys cheer for Mongols? Do you think in India?
Well, maybe the few fans remaining, they do. They 100% do. Listen, man, if I'm going to cheer for an Asian team, I'm going to die, and Counter-Strike might die as a game before I get a team from my region, right?
True.
Also, Wolf doesn't fucking count because India got a spot. It got a spot.
For it's true. That was actually people don't know. It was whoever qualified. It was always going to be an Indian team, right? Although, by the way, you know the best part about that detail? No one remembers that team even, Bleh. It's just that mad piece of trivia that bloody Kassad was coaching. I'm like, that's still the weird. Every time I hear that, I have to remember it. Like, that's true. What the fuck? Does he make sense?
I was top three. I was top three in the qualifier right there. I played as well.
You were in that, bro. That's even more ridiculous, Maui. The reason Bleh knows it's insane they gave an actual like a real qualifier slot to like top 16 at Cologne is Bleh was in the qualifier and came like third. Like, that's like that shit where you say you played against fucking Malms or something. Like what? How is that possible? That's ridiculous,
dude. But it was so funny because when they get a spot, I think it was because Epsilon broke apart. I think that's what happened. So right. And there was ESL India. ESL India had an office, which is not been gaming basically. And ESL like, hey, if this could get more viewers in from the region, let's get a spot right there. And then they actually got they paid Kassad to come down. And
right. Right.
Hey, man, listen, they got 7 rounds against NIP. This is big NIP.
By the way, to be fair, that's actually a detail that ties into what we're talking about here, which is, to be fair, that's actually a point that people will miss, which is, that is actually the original one. Before now you say China because people know the success like League of Legends had there and Dota and stuff like that. But actually back then, you're right. People won't know this, Bleh, but India was the first one they tried to open because you remember the Wahengbam 1.6 famously. It's why a bunch of teams went there and there was all those like scandalous
Fnatic came there?
Yeah. And Moscow 5 and those guys when they went to that crazy
we don't
one.
Talk about that.
No, we don't. I know we pretend that one didn't happen, but they did nick all the PCs or whatever. But anyway, the point is that was originally conceived to be the market they wanted to open. That's why even in CSGO they adopted India and all. It's true. That was the original version of if you put the event there, maybe people will turn up. I don't know that always works out. I'd say it's pretty hit and miss, and other the fact is anyway.
Listen, they did ESL. I think ESL won Mumbai for Dota, and let's just say they never came back again.
Right.
So,
But I will say one last piece of trivia. This is also mad because almost no one knows this one. In fact, I only found it out myself when I did that Reflections interview with Peter. Is at the time that Kassad was at this event, it was the one that was ESL Cologne 2014 that an IP won out of nowhere. And there's actually an insane detail in this Reflections, which just shows you that, like, low key, Kassad actually always was just one of the coolest people in the scene, guys. Peter says something mad. Like at this event, once Wolf was out, so at some point in the event, Kassad just came and told Peter something like a team did or something like a tip, like, oh, you check out, like, they're doing this and this way. And that, like, actually was something Nip used to, like, help them win the fucking major or something, man. So he's just behind the scenes, just one of those legit people. Just obviously, you all think he just already came along WWE style now was the heel to battle Huxley, your actual babyface, who, by the way, would be one of the wackest babyfaces of all time. Even though I will say, Huxley, I still want you in the scene and actually to be in a good team now. In fact, I'd still kick out Cadian tomorrow just to make space for you, bro. But then again, part of that's also Cadian motivated. Anyway, by the way, just random detail, the two teams that did kick Cadian within the last year, Heroic and Mongol, and fucking Team Liquid, into the playoffs. So all I'm saying is, you know, I don't write the rules, Cadian. That's just how it goes, mate. So anyway, let's get into this episode. So Blair, what is the good point? Spoiler, I've sort of set up there. It's pretty obvious what the good point's going to be, right? Let's get into it. Let's glaze. Let's glaze.
I'm full glazing here, right? Like, it has to be, obviously for me, it is the Mongols making to the playoffs of a major. Now, the reason I want to talk
and they 3-0'd, bro. It's not like they just crept in. They 3-0'd this motherfucker, yeah.
I mean, they started off with G2. Yeah, and then they go up against Mouse. By the way, Mouse for me, I think Mouse.
By the way, if you go and check those pick'ems, by the way, a bazillion people at G2 3-0. So like that, now people might claim like, oh, it's plausible. No one thought that was going to happen. Nobody. Come on,
It was ridiculous. I put up a 3-0 just for the memes. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, we ride or die, right?
Yeah.
The Mouse win was the most legit for me because I'm like, Mouse are a team who are very, very stable against teams below them, right? So Mouse and Vitality are the two teams where I'm like, surely, you know, these are what they're going to struggle against. But once you got that win, I'm like, okay, yeah, these guys are fucking legit. And for me, the biggest thing here is the trajectory is insane. It's fucking insane. This is a team. Where, you know, last year, I think it was like Cologne last year, where Cadian was like, "You fucking noobs," you know, when it choked, they fumbled it, and then end of this year, Copenhagen, they snuck in by beating shit teams to the second stage of the major, an elimination stage, and then they actually bumped out, right? They lost to Pain of all teams right there. And at that point, we're all wondering, is Mazinho kid, maybe he's too young, this 9-10 is too inconsistent, and then they just go on this fucking streak. They find form, they're able to beat a lot of teams. And I spoke to, actually, since most of them don't speak English, I spoke to the social manager who does a lot of their tweets and stuff. Great guy, actually. Mongolian, lives in France, lives in Paris, speaks great English. And he's like, they seem to have a mental block against star players, star teams. They see Zaiwu, they see MongoZ, they see Nico, and they're like, oh shit, it's MongoZ and all these guys. But then when they're playing in EU, they start playing a lot of FPL, and they're fucking kicking, you know, pushing people shit in, and they're like, wait, we can take these guys on. They built that confidence, and I believe they got a performance coach as well, like a mental coach, which is a really cool detail they haven't really spoken about. And you can clearly see they don't approach his games like underdogs, right? They just come in and they're just like completely stomping ass. And at this point, I said if they made it to playoffs, that's already a massive win for me, 100%. But the way, the trajectory, the fashion doing it right now in front of a crowd as well, I'm like, they could go deep. They could 100%. I think they're the one team all these other teams are kind of wary of facing off against, right? And I think that's really cool. And a lot of people are saying this is the greatest Asian team of all time. Now, well, Duncan, you and I are kind of old. So
that video will fix that. Don't worry about that. We got like the Koreans and the Chinese were pretty good, guys. They were pretty fucking good once upon a time.
Pretty fucking good,
you know?
But in the modern day Counter-Strike, since 2010, from 2011 till now, this is the biggest achievement by any Asian Counter-Strike team, period. The loss was when Solo's team, I think it was We Made Fox back then, won the World Esports Masters. WEM? Yeah. They beat SK, they beat Frag Executioners, that's the, you know, Neo's team. There was NAVI there was Fnatic. This is like a stack fucking tournament, by the way. They won that. So for me, that will be the last great true win. But with the context of how difficult and how competitive Counter-Strike is right now, and the Mongols doing it, I think it is not just fantastic. I hope it is going to do what Fallen and his men did for the Brazilian scene when they had that fucking epic run in 2016.
I also just, I mean, to add on anything for this, because it was a pretty comprehensive amount of coverage, just looking at the in terms of the trajectory, in terms of how much they've skyrocketed, I feel like it's actually so interesting to me that last year they replaced 3 people. Like I don't even I think that to me is so ridiculous that it's just Blitz and Techno from the original IHC lineup, and that it was Bartak, Annihilation, and Azteca that they had to remove. And the question I have is like, that IHC team was already turning heads in some ways. Like
they were like one of those playing merchants that can fuck someone up and ruin the tournament for them. Yeah.
I mean, they qualified to a couple majors already with that group. So they qualified to Rio, they qualified to Antwerp under that banner. And yeah, like you said, they could pull off the occasional upsets. They could, take maps off some of the best teams in the world. And then they actually didn't settle on that. They Blitz didn't actually just sit there and say, "Okay, cool, you guys are great." He actually went and found better Mongolian talent, as if
that's very wrong. Now, that's why I'm going to interject here because this is the one guy no one talks about when it comes to this team. It's fucking Mara. He is that guy. He coached Mongols when they beat Chad's team Renegades in 2016 in Taipei when they had their first, Machine Gun Zilkenberg. He was a coach back then.
Oh, wow.
He was a coach back then. And now he comes in, he decides who stays and go. So from what I heard when Score was in that team, Score supposedly asked the players, "Yo, it's either me or Mara," and the team are like, "Yeah, we're sticking with Mara." He picks the players.
Right.
And all these other guys, you're talking about Annihilation, talking about Score, you're talking about all these really solid looking stars. Every team they go to, they've floundered, they've struggled.
By the way, Blair, that's even an angle probably they don't get credit for, Mongols, right? Actually, Annihilation, that region was considered like a star player, right? Actually, to kick that guy out, it's like a massive gamble, right? For 17 and 18-year-olds, that's kind of wild, right? There's no way they'd know that'd work, right? That's kind of a big gamble.
And also picking up someone like Muzinho and like even Desenzu, you're like, are you sure about this? Sure. But I think Mara's proven that he's got a really good eye for untested young talent. He actually goes to LAN cafes and scouts them out. Like, he does that. Number one. I
like the way he's like an old school baseball scout, like just watching the kids in the park, like, "Hey, you got something, kid? You want to?" I love it. That's awesome. I love
it. That's so great. Yeah, I love it. By the way, if you watch any of the other Mongolian teams like Atox and the Chinggis Warriors and these teams, I sometimes watch them. I'm like, yo, you guys play shit CS. You have really talented players. You play shit CS. What is the commonality here? What's a common factor? It's fucking Mara. He is that guy.
Right.
He is that guy.
He's like the Blade of their region, basically.
Yes, 100%.
Right. Yeah, keep going anyway, Maui.
And the fact that they replaced Bartak with his younger brother Muzinho, who's 15 at the time, also just such an absurd way to go about it. Like, I've also imagined what it's like to be Bartak. It's like, wait, we qualified to multiple majors. We've taken some maps off of the best teams in the world, and you want my 15-year-old younger brother? That's also just such a ridiculous story behind that. So I feel like this team has, in so many ways, just also completely shedded that whole idea that Asian CS plays in a particular way, because they just don't. They just play it the right way. They take the right amount of risk with good, well-executed set pieces, with actually having defaults that lead to good mid-rounding, and they play in a way where they're trading off of each other. Their numbers in terms of trade stats, flash assists always is like at a reasonable level. They're never just like purely relying on opening kills being super high because we have some cracked out aimer. It's like, no, they actually have good setup in many of their rounds. They seem incredibly balanced, and this feels like from a region that we've so frequently characterized as just being kind of puggy, for lack of a better word, like to be a bit reductive.
Yeah,
they've completely shedded that.
By the way, I'll pick up on that one to keep the consistency. That's even one of the things that, first of all, when this lineup came along, I noticed. Because I agree. A lot of people in their brain, I think, all they did is change org. And it was IHC, which they remember, like, in those Cologne and Katowice players could beat like a Furia or upset someone or take you to 3 maps. And then in their brain, they're like, oh, they just changed org and they were Mongols. It's like, no, it's basically a totally different team at this point in time, especially because, crucially, you didn't have Senzu, who was like the man. But I have to say, one thing that I definitely noticed immediately about this team before I even got to know the players was actually the style of players, one of the best aspects of the team. I also do agree they have their own style of play. Like, I think this team is one thing I think is incredibly impressive is the reason I think a lot of Asian teams played poggy. I can actually give you an example using some of the 1.6 history of like the styles, how people used to play. Right, Koreans, I can tell you, approach everything the same way. They actually have it. It's why they're very good in school academically. They're a very systematic people. They like to have protocols and follow them. And I always thought, unfortunately, in Counter-Strike, they often actually were, as a result, result, it's funny because people like the Fnatic and people who used to play them from Europe will go, they're random. It's like they're the opposite, bro. They play by their protocol every time. If anything, they're too static. Like, and their problem always was that was okay in 1.6 when they were good and they went to all the events like every month or two, so they were up on the meta. But I always thought Asian teams, if they try and play like perfect CS, if you're just stuck in your region though and you don't get familiarity with the other teams, you won't actually know how modern meta CS is played though. So all you'll do is you'll just be really obvious and predictable, but not as good, and so you'll just lose. Which I actually do think if you go back and look, a lot of teams, I think when all those MVP teams tried that, they tried their best, but they didn't have the players and they were playing like an inferior predictive style. Whereas if you remember those Tyloo teams, it's almost like their approach was like, we'll just fuck any meta, we'll just rush. Like, well, like for real, the reason I like that team is somebody like, forget like Plus W Religion. He's like fucking John the Baptist of Plus W Religion. Like, he was doing that from the beginning, mate, before that was even a thing. Like, this guy just always pressed W. It's what I actually love about his game. But as a result, their style really was just like bird strike. It's like, maybe we can just randomly take you down for a map, but it's not like a consistent style that works. This team is the most decisive Asian team I've ever seen in the CSGO era onwards. Like, they actually have like a really, like, they can just pull the trigger, mate, and I love how people just react. Like, it's why I always go out of my way to give credit, actually. Look, I'll give all the massive credit. One of the reasons why they're actually a truly great team, in the same way as if you watch MIBR, they wouldn't be that team without the Insanity guy. They obviously have to have like the young super mega player. Senzu is the shit, by the way, guys. He's actually unbelievably good. But I'll tell you what, he's just doing the frags, right? I actually think, in theory, you could make a case, if you want to talk about intangibles, that Blitz is the most important player in this team, because the style is clearly defined by him. He's the IGL. He's not some fucking IGL, by the way, who's going to do 0.8 rating. He's the IGL of frags, and is, like, decisive to the style. Like, if anything, if you want a comparison to the West, he's like some, like, Twists character, where he's trying to, like, IGL and be one of the stars. So that's dope. You've already got, like, 2 fraggers there. And the Senzu guy, by the way, I think is mad underrated. Like, I'll give you a stat right now, guys. So think about how many lands you've seen them at in the last few months. So I've just done the classic LAN 3 months filter, right? In the last 3 months, for opening kills, he attempts 25%. Now, that's a very high usage. People don't know that. It's like what like the most aggressive riflers do. He has a success rate of 57.7%. Like, that is actually impossible. Like, you have to understand, guys, that's like what Donk would do or something. I mean, Donk would have even higher percentage, but like that is actually like, you can't fake that number unless you just play like really bad teams. Like I said, crucially, I picked an era when they're playing all the European lands and the West lands.
Not
like
a single Asian.
No, that is real. That by the way, he's doing that against you know, like a G2 or fucking Mouse, like we say. Like, right, these numbers, by the way, if that was any player in like France or we'd all be going, this guy's the future. He's going to be like a HLTV top 20 player. That's why I always tell people that guy, if MongolZ do well enough, probably next year, he will be a HLTV top 20 player. Senzu will be. Well, already that's just what the doctor ordered if you want a team to have like upset potential. But then, crucially, it's not like it is just like we used to say about the old Bentet on Tyloo or fucking the classic one was Machine Gun on the old MongolZ. It's not that you've just got one skilled player and then the rest are sort of whatever. The Blitz guy, because he's the IGL, can have massive impact in the game. 9-10, I actually think, even though he gets focused on because he's the AWPer, actually he isn't, they don't have to rely on him every game. He's actually a very up and down player, but they can sort of accommodate that in their style. And then the Mauisnake guy is the one that's actually put them over the top, because this was just the like 17-year-old noob who you would have expected a Cadian to be like, hey, are you scared, mate? Because he actually used to have a lot of like up and down performances. The last few months, he's just been on one, mate. And so suddenly, that's probably the craziest thing here. I'll contrast them with another team that people maybe thought could do a similar run, which was MIBR. MIBR is just a bunch of good players with like average style CS, and in fact, they're very predictable. In fact, the one thing they probably lack is an IGL. So the difference is, I told people, MIBR can win the BO1s. They're never winning these BO3s and go to the playoffs. Like, you mind. And even if they did, by the way, they'd have no one they could beat in the playoffs. I agree with you. MongolZ actually not only has the style, they have the strength. By the way, all of a sudden now Mauisnake's good. They actually have firepower. Like, not just one player. They have actually equivalent firepower, guys, to other top 10 teams they are playing from Europe, from North America. Like, if they play a Liquid, I don't even know, by the way, that like Liquid is a better team skill-wise. There's better names, but I don't even know that they would have more firepower. It's probably comparable.
This is probably like, I don't even think it's a hot take to make here, but I feel like the individual skill floor of each individual MongolZ is higher than than of any other team. Sure, Nico's there, MonteCristo's there, but if you look at like the weak link, right, just fragging prowess wise, MongolZ have not a single weak point, which is insane. Like, Mauisnake,
I will say, people don't know, if you just go and look up the stats, like on the last 3 months on LAN, 3 of them are over a 1.1 rating, and the 4th one is 1.09, the 5th one is 1.04. So like, actually, you're not, the stats actually bear it out, Bleh. This is like very good numbers, yeah.
Yeah. And even as eye test, like, you know, Mauisnake, your extremity lurk, your A anchor player, he's like popping off as well consistently against really good teams, right? So I'm just gonna say I don't think they necessarily have one single weak link when you're like, yeah, maybe if you switch this player out better. No. There isn't. And
crucially, to contrast with MIBR, I told people the other thing you're going to hate about MIBR is, by the way, MIBR is the team that proves BO1s aren't BO3s. Because in BO1, you obviously ban 3 maps, right? So you can always get away from the worst possible. Their problem is in BO3s, they can't win, guys, because their map pool has too many holes in it, and they're not actually like exceptional on many of the maps. So as a result, as you saw, they can win a map, but that's it. In a BO3, you're going to get got. MongolZ has a real map pool. I know if in your brain, if you've already seen the upsets, you're just thinking it's ancient. It ain't, bro. It's ancient. It's Mirage. It's what you keep it fucking going, mate. What else would Inferno, like, put them against top teams on any of these maps. And by the way, the Ancient especially, they could go head-to-head with anyone on that map, mate. Like, that's even a map, I think, that's one of the maps that showed me the decisive style. Because think about how slow the build-up of some teams on Ancient is, and how they just take forever to do the rotation. This team doesn't do that. It's like they pick a timer and they just attack you, mate. It's really effective. He works against the best team. So, yeah, I'll just say, I agree with you, by the way. The key thing here that's really exciting is, one, even if it's like, you know, like, if this is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire did the bank, we've already got enough of it. We've already got a fucking awesome Dark Horse team. But I agree with you. One, because they're actually a real, like, best-of-3 team. It's only, in my opinion, that Espo event. I don't put that down to anything to do with talent. That was just nerves, in my opinion. They're not used to being the favourite and being on stage. You've got to get past that. Everyone does. Heroic had to do it. Every team that comes up has to go through that phase. But the difference is, Bleh, this team could actually both get better in the game. I think they're already this close to, like, beating some of these teams in a playoff. And then secondly, you nailed it at the beginning. Bro, Mauisnake is 17, Senzu is 18, and Techno is 19. And they're inexperienced. So they're young in the game. And that means literally these players could get better. Like, if I want to talk, I always think people don't even talk about this with Donk. Bro, the guy is 17. You are aware he might actually just be, like, even better when he's 20. Like, you have to put that on the table. So same with Senzu. What if this guy, guys, even just got 5% better? Suddenly we're talking about, like, the whole world's different in Counter-Strike. Now, this isn't like an upset team. That would be like a real team, like top 5 or something, mate.
I think this might be, I could be wrong here, but I think this is probably the youngest team ever at major playoffs. I could be wrong, but it is absolutely one.
That sounds plausible to me, mate, yeah. Because remember, most teams usually had like a 27-year-old 1.6 player or something. The oldest person people don't know, I think it's Blitz, who's like 22 or something. He's not even that old himself, mate.
23 or something.
Yeah, the average age has got to be, the average age must be like 20 or something. This team is pretty good,
20.2. 20.2 right now.
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's actually a rare example because obviously normally people do make too much out of underdogs. This is actually a rare example. You're not, guys, get on this train. This train is going to further stations, mate. It's not ended now. Like, I'm a massive fan. I think it's great. Yeah, like I say though, the one thing I'm waiting for, but it's the same with every team coming up, is I want to see them now do it when like we all know the attention's on them and it's actually time. I will say, tell you what, as much as I don't think they're going to win the major, if you had to give them a bracket to give them a chance, though, they've got a fucking chance with that one, boys. They've got the side of the bracket you would want. Like I said, they've even got Mouse. They've got the side of the bracket you'd want. So it's not impossible. We're not going to rule it out, I'll tell you that. Which, like Pim said, is a big deal itself. The fact that you can't just completely rule it out that they can't win, bro, that's big.
That's gotta be crazy.
Like, I would have said that about MIBR, but I'll say that about Team Liquid. I don't think Team Liquid could win. Isn't that a statement in itself, guys? I don't think Team Liquid could win this major. I don't think it's impossible MongolZ could. Look, obviously, I'd have them as like my 6th or 7th team. I'm not being an idiot, but I still wouldn't have them 8th.
Yeah.
Right, anyway.
I'd probably put him like 5th. I
think it's fair. Yeah,
I think
I also agree with Bleh, by the way. As much as MongolZ themselves have clearly, I think, sometimes struggled from when they get to a playoffs, they have all the pressure and they have the more. Tell you what, all the other teams though, nobody's used to this meta of the idea you could be in the major playoffs and get bounced by a fucking team from the Asian region. So I'll tell you what, I think a lot of teams like Mouse is going to be scared in that game. I think it's Mouse will actually have the pressure. Yeah, I agree with you, Bleh. If anything, they can actually somewhat play a little bit without pressure in that game. And let's see if Mouse can handle it, because here's the problem. In this moment, it's going to feel like, oh, we're losing to underdogs. They're actually, in theory, on paper, almost as good as you guys now. We have to just accept this is a real match at this point. It's not some crazy, they're doing random stuff like we said. This is a real team. If you actually just take the Asian part out, just look at all the metrics, they're just a real top team. They're just that good.
Yeah. Also, one final thing to add to that. Apart from the Asian RMR, Berlin, they play in front of a crowd, right? Small crowd, sure. Also, group stages, crowd non-stop. So when you step into the playoffs arena, sure, it's going to be bigger and grander, but they're not going to be stranger to the crowd. That is worrying for any other team.
Right, Maui, what is your good point?
Mine is the fact that, I preempted this. Actually, people were kind of clowning it on the first day after we did the last Snake Banter. I was saying that, it's really cool how consistent the top teams are. Well, we got them. We got them with the exception of NAVI, obviously. For everybody out there, like, we basically got for most people's pick'ems, if you could have just said who's going to make it, who's not going to make it, most people in the world would have got 7 out of 8 here. Like, I don't.
If we hadn't all failed the first, the whatever you call it, the opening phase, I'm pretty sure everyone would be on for the coin now, wouldn't they? Like, didn't almost everyone get the elimination phase, like you said?
Oh yeah, I do. Surely. I think
you'll need 5,
because
right?
FaZe, because FaZe made it at the very end, right there. That was like a lot of people's faith, right?
Yes.
And so for all of the teams that, we. Sure, like world ranking wise, Furia is higher than the Mongols and Liquid, but like nobody actually believed that. Like truly nobody believed that. That was from like a Rio performance that we knew was not going to be replicated. Other than that, though, the point being that not only did we get a lot of favorites in, the good point is we got the 3 best players in the world in. Okay, that's what I am keeping my eye on closest at this event. Sure, we're going to have to crown a winner at the end of this. I'm not even saying this begrudgingly, but one of my favorite narratives throughout the year is who is the best player of 2024. And in some ways, I will say, I have picked Donk. Like, Donk is my favorite player this year in terms of, I have a bunch of reasons for that. I tweeted about it. I just think what he's doing with the rifle is absurd. But I know that HLTV, given that they're the ones that generally have to write this stuff down and then people just take it as gospel till the end of time, this will matter for them. If one of the 3 players here wins the MVP at this, I truly think that HLTV is just going to say, that's it. We split hairs, and because one of them won MVP, we're going to give it to MonteCristo, Donk, or ZywOo. If it's somebody else, like a random another candidate, they're not in the running. It's just almost like, how do the playoff runs look of these 3 guys? So, yeah, overall, the good point just being that Donk, MonteCristo, and ZywOo, the race is still on, and it really is going to probably be until the grand finals for us to finally to crown one of them.
What do you think?
Yeah, or for HLTV to crown one of them.
I agree. I think just the fact that we had everyone here, Navi we'll get to later on, but yeah, I think it's also very telling as to, it's been a bit of a year of just, anyone can beat anyone, right? But also, it always feels like, it kind of feel like it calcified to a point near the end of this year where anyone can beat anyone in a top 10, in a top 8. The teams outside are going to struggle. And for me, the entire discussion was, there are a couple of teams on that line. Where do they lie? MongolZ, they showed where they lay. They said we're going to be in the top 8, top 10 discussion. And a team like Eternal Fire, eternally still, languishing in we're the best in tier 2. We sometimes belong in tier 1. We're right there. It was really cool to see how, at least the top 8, top 9, everyone showed up when they really had to. And I think that's also because of, just the seeding being good, right? Sure, best of ones and all of that, but the seeding just being good. And as long as the teams are coming in playing form, in major form right there, this is what you get. So yeah, I agree with you. I think just the fact that we have such a stack. There's not one team here who could be like, yeah, you don't belong here. Sure, Navi's not here, but guess who played better Counter-Strike? It was Heroic. They deserve to be here.
Yes.
Simple as that. Are Heroic a top 10 team? Yes, they are. So Navi, I'm sorry, you did not play to the level you should have played to be here. I think this is a perfect, I don't know about a bracket, but it's a perfect 8 teams that we have here. Yeah.
Yes, I actually like the framing that Maui did, which is basically just like, if you want this race to continue, as it were, and especially, obviously, people like HLTV.org, always to some degree do count placings, because obviously they count the EVP, and you have to get that, you usually have to get into the playoffs and do a deep run, etc., etc. So I will say the reason why it's good is essentially it means no matter who me or Maui or Bleh think is number 1, if you actually want that to match up with who HLTV, but you should want all 3 players to go as deep as possible. Because like at the end of the day, like pretty swear, I'll tell you right now, the real reason this amazing race exists, it's because thankfully, none of these players are on Navi. Because if they were on Navi and they'd won all those events and they were in this race, everyone would just say to the person who won all the events. So I actually think it's almost better in some ways that like MonteCristo was on like the Scuff G2, so we all like, even though now they're actually fucking really sick, we all still think of it like he's 1v9ing. You have ZywOo, whose team just doesn't win the events, even though to be fair, they're in like every fucking semi-final. And then you have Donk, who I actually think is in the toughest spot of all, but luckily, thankfully, they've had a little renaissance at the end of the year and they've made this run now and also have the side of the bracket to potentially go deep. So it's actually almost perfect. Like the dream that we all probably want is, you probably want it to be 2 of them in the final and then one of them plays one of them in the semi-final. And then if that happens, it's not about who wins the game, but we can just see them all in the biggest matches, maybe convince us all with one last argument. I do personally think in general, most people probably should have made your mind up. Because one thing I'll say is, I won't make this a whole point, but I do think on those 3 players, like put it this way, people will know I'm not the biggest ZywOo fan. I don't think someone's an idiot if they say it's ZywOo. They can have their own reasons to it. Maybe they like the fact he ops and he's a rifler, or he can play different roles, finals, or by the way, he is unbelievable at getting you to playoffs. I can tell you what, if I say they make all the semis, he's one of the reasons why. He's almost guaranteed to make you to a semis. A bit like Simple. It feels like you can't fail the playoffs if you've got these guys. So even if I pick MonteCristo and Maui I don't think there's really a wrong answer here. So I would just say this. I'm just glad that we're in a scenario where we can actually have this great back and forth and people can change their mind based on who wins MVP and all that jazz. Because I do think when players are as good as that, people do this in football all the time, mate. Like, please don't say that someone was actually robbed. Robbed is when someone who doesn't even deserve to win the trophy wins it. Robbed isn't when, like, my guy's number one and yours is second, a close second, and then your one wins. Like, that's just preference. Like, essentially, if me and Maui did, like, one of those episodes that we did about Elise versus Twist, I'm pretty sure it would just come down to what we like, not the players. It would be something like Thorin likes people close out or thinks it's harder to, like, fucking win from 3v5 than it is to make a 5v3. Something like that, it'd be some philosophical, it wouldn't even be about what they did in the game. So I agree with you. I just want the talk to be alive, active. This is also, by the way, why it's awesome to have a major end the season. Why not just end on the biggest fucking moments? Do they all have a chance to sort of like pop off at the end? I think that's perfect. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Right. Actually, I don't know. Well, Bleh, who would you pick right now?
Yeah, who's your choice?
Put you on the spot.
I think I'd go in MonteCristo. I have various reasons.
For player of the year. Player of the year.
Yeah, MonteCristo. Okay. Player of the year. Very simple. I mean, it's not a simple reason. I think, dude, the fact that Donk was not, we didn't even know about Donk being in the running last year. Sure. The fact that he's actually a real contender is insane to me, right? But I just look at this G2 team, the changes they've had, all the ups and downs and all these doubts and questions. And then you have this fucking kid being like, fuck you, I'm going to carry the ass out of you. Sure has the op. And again, like I said, I can see an argument where Donk would be better as well. So for me, at the end of the major, I will make up my mind. And I think the major is going to matter 100% for me personally.
I'll just say that the one thing about this one is I've been there for every one of the play races in history. I saw when it was like, fuck, I don't make up one, Heated against Ellenberg or fucking go whatever, Kogu against Fraud, Markelov against pick any play, Trace or something, Neo against Fraud. I've seen all the great matchups, but here's the difference.
There.
True. Even though in all those matchups, though, I would have had a choice, right? And I acknowledge the other one was a legit one. The difference is, on the other ones, I somehow always could decide, it's this guy. For me, it's this guy, and I actually will say, even though I pick MonteCristo for this one, every time, I've said this before on past ones, but it's true, every time I think about the donk side, though, I suddenly start thinking it's donk, but then when I go back to the MonteCristo side, I make it MonteCristo again. It's one of the only times ever I actually think that the two players are unique and different enough that, like, I don't think there is a right answer on that one. And the two ones, he's just a really good player all around. He's good at everything, isn't he? But I actually think the donk one, the real problem is this, Maui. We'll have to do some sort of content about this in the future, because I almost feel like, forget this conversation, he is just the most unique star player to ever play Counter-Strike. That's the real issue, right? Like I say, really it's about how do you weigh, like, opening, because we've never really thought of that. In fact, let's be real, most people who are the entry like him are actually, like, sacrificial. Like, actually, they're supposed to be baited. Normally, we work off the principle of a trade frag. This guy, like, the joke is, his trade frag is, I kill two of you and you kill one of me. That's, like, his version of trading, like, he's just doing some Donald Trump art of the deal then, I guess, every time, fucking hell. So, it's crazy, and I don't know how they do it. So, I don't even know how to judge that, mate, because I have a really hard time. Like I say, I can wake up one day and it can be donk, but I could watch a match and then it might be MonteCristo. It's one of the hardest ones ever for me. But that's why I think it's dope. It's actually a good problem to have, isn't it? It means CS is fucking popping. And by the way, it also means the game isn't shit. Like, people are really good in this game. They're fucking insanely good. Speaking of which, that actually is a perfect tie-in to my good point. Because you know what? Even though you might think this is incredibly not on brand, then you don't know me, because beyond the banter, I actually have always thought one thing that was very underrated about the Brazilian region is talent. If you don't know, they've always had this mega active land scene there and local scene. It's why actually even in the last few years when they do events there, they can have events and not only have high viewership, but you suddenly realise, wait a minute, actually, if you do get the top 3 or 4 teams, it's not a bad land. Like, this is as good as like an ESL Challenge or something. And you look, and man, people will forget this because of the weird buyouts and the fact everyone good doesn't just straight go to Furia. There's actually, I mean, you see it now with MIBR, you see it now with Pain, and people used to fuck with the Imperial players, maybe not. Red Canids have had the odd upset, etc. My good point is just Brazilian talent, because I feel like we only ever talk about Brazil, unfortunately, top down, because Furia isn't good enough. Or we look at MIBR and we hope they're going to be good enough, but they're not good enough yet. And what people miss, or we talk about Kesara or being trapped in prison and he's wasted his pride, which is all true. But what people don't, if you go to the other end, you go to the bottom and look at the talent level. Man alive, they've got talent in that region. Like, think about just this major, guys. You've got Insani, you've got Lukowski, who just joined their team, Skulls on Furia. By the way, everyone who said before that Jocker Steve and Zeus are idiots, like, no, they just didn't know he wouldn't work in a fucking not international team. This guy was good and he had the talent. You can see it. You've got fucking NQZ. If you haven't seen that guy, he's fucking popping off as an AWPer. By the way, Big Azera himself is some blitz character where he IGLs pretty well and frags. Like, the talent is really there. It's not about like Fury or Kiss. Like, I actually think you have just a good point is, man, there's so much talent in the Brazilian scene. There's even players, I'll totally admit, because I don't watch it, that to me look like a random set of letters. And then I have to be like, right, there's another one, write it down. I'm going to have to find out who this guy is. This guy's way better than I thought. Who the fuck's this 18-year-old kid I never saw in a team before? So what do you guys think? I think that it's mad how much talent they have over there.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the reason why it's taken a while for us to start to pay attention to a lot of the talent, apart from, you know, your Hennies and, like you said, some of the Imperial guys and all of that, is I think a very similar problem as the Asian region in a way. And the reason being, apart from Fallen, you know, if you look at him as the guy, the godfather, and, you know, building the team and making it work around him, I don't think they had too many leadership figures from back then who really immediately transitioned. And Fallen was why now you have Knack, you know, you have Bit and all these guys, but they came in much later, remember? They came in like 2019, 18, 19, once the Brazilian scene started to explode. So I feel like for a lot of the young talent, they didn't really have the proper guidance, didn't know how to approach it the right way. They were always raw aimers. But now that some of these old guys are there, and also the fact that, you know, your Coldzera, the guys who were under Fallen's tutelage, they started building their own team. Sure, they didn't find too much success, but it was still a germ of an idea for all of these young guys. So now we're starting to see the coalesce. Now we're seeing an MIBR. Now we're seeing Sani and Lukowski. Now we're seeing how Drop, by the way, you know, the easiest scapegoat in the Fury team, but guess who he was under? It was Fallen. Also, he told me once in after parties, like, you know, right before he got kicked, of course, he was like, you know, I actually am the second most vocal guy in the team.
Oh, wow.
Fallen.
Okay.
I actually try to give.
Seems like quite a cerebral player. I mean, he does a good job in his role, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, you know, I don't give necessarily the best of ideas, but I try. And I'm like, oh. So when he became the IG, I'm like, there's a pedigree behind that, right? So you're seeing all of it coming into place at the right time, because there's young kids learning to fall in, and, you know, the old guys coming in. Now they're older. Now they're wiser, they're better. And you find all these guys. What's up?
Wait, you mean drop with art? Or
sorry, drop with art. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Which makes even more sense if you think about it.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's only going to get better, man, honestly. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the talent in Brazil is just absurd, actually. It's like the amount of people that you could... I'd actually even expand it to South America. Like, after watching that one Argentinian team that was playing with... the guy Thomason that was on.
Oh, fuck yes! He was wrecking. Yeah, he was mega in that previous in the RMR. You mean? Yeah, he was mega, wasn't he?
That guy was crazy.
He was a stud,
good
for real. Yeah.
That guy was actually he stuck it to M80. Like if he could have almost single-handedly taken down M80, but like he had 100 ADR in the series. He had 108 on the deciding map, and his teammates, nobody got over 64 ADR. Like, that's how sad his teammates were. But, like, no, in terms of actual talent, that region is just so stacked right now. There's so many people seemingly playing Counter-Strike from South America right now. The Brazilian teams, too. I mean, I guess even, again, talking about a South American player, like David Deas for Red Canids, he didn't have the best RMR, but all in all, he was their best player for my money coming into it, and he's Chilean also, so I guess I'm expanding it at this point, but you got Chilean players that are good, you got Argentinian players that are good, you got, what else? Like, I think there's even Uruguayan players that are pretty solid now also.
The DGT guys from Uruguay, right?
Yeah, DGT, Max, you have those, you have the 9Z guys who kind of struggling right now, but, you know, we saw the peaks they had.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Dallas, for example, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much Latin American talent right now, which is just all very powerful. And to see MIBR and Pain, and I'm glad you kind of bring it up, because I had MIBR making it through the last stage. I don't think a lot of people really expected that, or not the elimination stage, the opening stage. I had them going through the opening stage because it's really hard in CS2 if you have two really good entry players in MongolZ and Insani to just be bad. Like it almost seems like it's difficult. So yes, I do agree that MIBR needs to upgrade. I wouldn't say they're IGLing with Drop because I think he's actually a good in-game leader, but it's just that they have only been around as a team for 2 months now with MongolZ, and so their map pool is just very shallow. It's a map puddle for MIBR. That's why, you know, they play like 2 maps very well or quite well for tier 1 CS in Inferno and Nuke, but everything else falls off a pretty strong cliff. Like actually their Vertigo's okay, but that's probably not going to matter in a month from now. So I just think they need to work on things like their tactics, their openers, and because the actual skill is there. I think the one thing that Brazil has still failed to do in my eyes, because yeah, I liked what I saw from NQZ and Safe in the previous stage, but once they actually started playing the real big dogs, they don't have anybody that's trending what the team is failing to help uplift them to do. Like those guys are solid against teams that are in the top 30 in the world. They're not actually good versus teams that are in the top 10 in the world for me. Yeah.
But then you see like these small little glimpses like that. Listen, what if that VOD of what Insani did to Navi should be in the dark web for how illegal that was. That was just watching it. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? Because he's just running it. It's instant pop up, and you can see JL, you know, just like, oh, I am actually really bad. Yes. I am bad at this game. I will now disappear. He broke it. Yes. He broke him as a person. The reason I didn't make it through is because when he woke up the next morning, he was still dreaming of him in his head, the bullet in his head. Yeah. That itself, I know it was one map. I know it's Navi getting, you know, outplayed, outred. Blade said it himself as well. But if that is a glimpse of what we can see more from MIBR next year, man, I'm excited. I'm fucking excited.
By the way, I'll also say as well, just like I said with Senzu, that's also the other thing. You have also got, like, not just a good player. Like, the Insani guy looks like he could actually be on the K-Serato, like, Cold Zero type level that we all dream of, the Furs, the mega players, where, again, like, I told people, this is why I did a video, like, 2 months ago. I said this is the most underrated player in the world. Because if you ever watch Pro, you can tell he has the talent, because he has, like, that mindset where he wants to take the duel against, like, the best aimers. Like you say about the Navi players, pretty sweet. Here's a statement if you haven't watched MIBR. The Insani guy is probably more talented than nearly all the Navi players. I know that sounds mental, because you'd be like, but hey, they're in the fight. Yeah, but the difference is that, like, Bit's strength is, like, headshotting and, like, style and play. So he's not mega aggressive, you know. He's not taking, like, crazy duels all the time. Someone like Immer's, like, a good player, but I'd say it's more like he's got, like, a consistent spray style, you know. This Insani guy is just, like, what you actually want if you're, like, a fanboy. Like, he's the CSDM pop him in the head guy. Like, it's a fucking mad player to watch. It's really enjoyable to watch. I don't even mind when players like that dip down when they're inexperienced. Like, when they hit so hard. Like, we're talking, like, the spoiler of the joke is, just ask Navi. They'll tell you how fucking insane this guy is. Like, he absolutely was cracked, yeah. Right, okay. Yeah. Speaking of good things, and we've tried to highlight all the excellent things, I mentioned this on a past episode, but this episode is brought to you in association with Aura. You can get $35 off using the code S&B. Obviously for Snake Banter. Now, I've mentioned this on a past one. I'm going to do this almost entirely authentic because actually I won't do the whole story again, but basically this is one of those ones where I would never think to buy this as a gift because I'm just not the sort of person who knows, like, what do you, like, it's that classic thing, what do you buy someone where you're trying to guess what they wouldn't know that they don't have and that you haven't ever bought them, but if you bought them, it'd be the perfect thing that they go, oh, I never would have thought about that. What a thoughtful thing. It's really hard to do that, especially for things like Christmas. And we all know this, especially for, like, your mom or your cousin or your auntie or someone who's not in your life every day. I actually think this might be the best holiday gift I've ever seen because what Aura is it's like a digital photo frame. Well, think about how an analog old school photo frame works. You just have a physical frame. Someone had to take a real picture, develop it, print it out in the shop. You give them that photo and they put one photo there and forever when they look, it's only that one photo. This really is I'll give you the analogy. In the same way as once you've used like a Kindle or an e-reader, you might still like real books, but you understand that, like, for convenience and variety, it's a million times better because the Kindle could have like 500 books on it. You could go anywhere with 500 books. You can switch between the books. You could be reading one book and go, actually, I'm going to pause that chapter and go another one. This is what this does for photos because what's brilliant about this is it uses like cloud technology. So one, you could just buy one for yourself, by the way, and program like your 300 of your favorite photos in and have it switch every 10 seconds or 1 minute or whatever you want and remind yourself. But I actually think for the holiday season, this is a dream gift because if you buy this gift for like your mum or your grandma or someone, and then they're, especially if they're like a boomer and don't know tech, and you just set it up in their house and you put the photos in, it's actually genius because one, it's going to be a really thoughtful gesture because now you're like giving your mum or your grandma or whatever, like photos of you and your family, and And if you have obviously like a younger family, maybe you have kids or a girlfriend or you're off living your life in another city, you can just program stuff from where you are and it'll appear in their frame. So they're in their living room, instead of it just being a picture of you when you were 12 and you won like a football tournament with a little trophy, it could cycle on the next one in their cloud cycle to be like you at the park now with your kid or someone on the swing, or they're graduating or so, you know what I mean? Like, it's actually, unironically, I'm not even like being silly here, it's actually one of the best things like we've ever advertised. Like, it's just a mad upside. And so I actually think for the Christmas season, especially if you are a gamer, we're known to be people who just sit on a PC all day, we're all isolationists, we're not thinking about like traditional family life. This is actually a thing where I think if you are that nerd, your family members aren't going to expect you to buy this for them, and I think they'll actually really appreciate the gesture. Obviously, we're sort of showing that you know that you haven't fulfilled that aspect. So, as I say, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames by using promo code, it's on the screen, S&B at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code S&B. This deal is exclusive to our listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply. Also, like I said, it's actually just a really dope thing. Like, it's one of those ones where I would have read the copy and looked into the product, but it's actually one where when I got it myself, I was actually impressed by how cool it is. Because like I say, I'll walk by it, it's programmed with all photos, and then actually when it switches over to the next photo, you do sort of look over and go, oh, I remember that. You put that one on there. It's actually genuinely just like a wholesome gift. I know you wouldn't think this is like on brand for Thorin, but I think it's pretty cool actually. When I'm not just being playing an arsehole on the internet, actually this is one of the things I enjoy and get, actual like joy out of. It's quite cool. So yeah, anyway, now we will talk about bad things. So Bleh, which is entirely on brand, right? But so what is your bad point, Bleh? What are you going with that? What are you targeting today?
All right, so let's do this, right? Let's. It's been on my mind for a while, but Fnatic is my bad, and I'll tell you why. It's simple. When was the last good placement from Fnatic? By the way, let's preface this. Fnatic, one of the most storied organizations in Counter-Strike history. Yeah. Talking about from 2006 when they had Karn, they had DS, and then they pick up this guy called, what's his name, Forest? And then later on, they pick up this guy called Getried. Best team for a couple of years. 2009, best team of the year. 2010, when NAVI came out, the only team who could go up against Markelov and company. Incredible legacy organization. Then they lose Forest and Getried. They still make a team. They pick up Exist out of nowhere. Like, what the fuck? They win shit. Still remain relevant. The final great 1.6 team before 1.6 kind of disappeared, right? CSGO comes about. They fluke a major win. Fuck it. You deserve the win. You got the win. NIP showed. Fair enough. Then for the next one, they lose. What do they do? This all-off Crims guy looks really good. Let's pick them up. Pick them up. The first proper legacy, apart from NIP and an 87-0 and all that bullshit, they actually had a moment where it's like, this team is just unbeatable. Like, literally unbeatable. The only other streak any other team went on was Astralis, right? And then you could see the decline happen, but they never really made any changes. Kept recycling the same old shit, same old shit. The last real legitimate placing from Fnatic as an organization was 2020 Kata when they placed in the semifinals. That was Crims. I think Flusher was there. J-Dubs was there. All of it left by then. A young Brolan was there, if memory serves me right.
Okay, yeah.
They haven't won or done fuck all since then. This is one of the most storied organizations. Now, if we're going to compare it to other organizations, look at NAVI. Look at where they are. Sure. We're talking about it. It's such a shocker they haven't made it. And ever since the switch over to this international lineup situation, by the way, nothing wrong with that. So many teams have made it work, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just been mediocre signings after mediocre signings. And now, I'm not pinning any blame on the players, by the way. Nothing against them. You get asked to play with Fnatic, good for you. Get that bread, right? Go for it. You get Blame F as well. And even when they signed Blame F, I'm like, I don't know about this team. I don't know what they're going to do. And then you go 0-3 out. You lose to Rare Adam. Rare Adam isn't even the top 3 best team in China. Like, Tai Lu is better than Rare Adam, bro. Sure. Tai Lu, even without an IGL right now. You get 0-3 and you lose to them. You lose to Wildcard. Like, and you're okay with that? Also, as an organization, not a single fucking tweet when they got knocked out. So where do your priorities lie as an organization, right? The only tweet they made was, oh, we got stickers. What about the fans who actually care about this team? Who care about the players? Who care about whoever you have on the team? Nothing from them. What else do I have? Yeah, the lineup changes have been absolutely mediocre for such a long time. I don't know how Keita is still there coaching when you have 0 results to show for, like any relevant results to show for so far. And then even the manager as well, Samuelson, he's been there forever. So now my question is to Karn as a CGO, you know, someone who's been storied career himself. He's the guy who's the face of Fnatic. I'm asking the management as well. What do you guys plan to do? Because Karn did put up a video recently, but it just seemed like Corp would speak to me, where he's like, "Yeah, changes are coming." I'm like, "What changes?" So you're going to replace Body with another like, you know, mediocre, you know, IGL? Like, where is the? I haven't seen anything of them where they trying to, you know, mix things up, shake something up, right? Make me surprised. Like, look at the Johnny Speeds team with some of the Swedish teams. You're famously a Swedish company. Why do you give them a shot with them, right? Why are you recycling has-beens or players who are playing in roles they really shouldn't be going for, right? If you're vying to be something relevant, if you say you're just content being a tier 2 team, so be it. At least let me know that, because when I see Fnatic, the black and orange, I still think of greatness, which these guys once had. So I kind of feel like I care about their Counter-Strike division than anyone working in the organization.
Bold. Yeah. The Karn interview had some statements to be lightly hopeful, I suppose. You know, they said that they do want to conduct changes with the coaching and or player staff. So at least they're probably going to do something. I think the way that Karn conducted it, actually, I liked it better than Threat from NIP saying that he's waiting until 2025 to be competitive. Like that is a joke of a statement.
Well, that's
also one of those ones where these guys are going to learn politics. Like that's when you've just created the soundbite. That's the headline that'll bury you. You know what I mean? Like that line, because then people are going to hear that without ever getting the context. It makes it sound like you're saying I'm writing off this year, doesn't it? Even though that's probably not what he meant. But I know what you mean. Like they've almost got to be careful how they say these things.
Yes, for the ramp up to take that long when NIP itself, like the people that they're picking from for players are people that actually played in decent teams from time to time. You know, they had, you know, I look at the moves that NIP did, and I just think that they made. If I had to actually guess, I would imagine that NIP spent more money on a lot of their moves, getting Isaac from Gamer Legion, getting Alex from Movistar, they got Wrinkle from Bait. And then for Fnatic, the only real ones that they did that I really noticed, I guess they got Knock from Unpaid.
I'm going to guess they probably had to pay something for Blame F, maybe. Maybe there's a buyout there.
So that's the only one that I imagine.
Knock is on loan right now, right? I think it's on loan.
Could be something like that. Who knows how that works,
I think
though.
Unpaid, yeah. God knows, yeah.
Well, if he's from Unpaid, quote unquote, then like, did they even
Who knows?
have to?
Yeah.
Okay, so either way, I feel like they just have been more low key. He is technically on loan from Bleed, but it's a team that do they even own him?
Exactly. They probably have to say that just in case Bleed claims he is under contract and he has to go to court or something. So yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah. All right. So either way, I look at both of those teams and I'm incredibly disappointed in how the organizations have fallen so badly. For Fnatic as a whole, the Rare Atom loss has to go down as for person for like pound for pound, just one of the most unacceptable losses in a fairly meaningless game. Like I'm not trying to sell people that this was like do or die or anything like that, but it's just like in a game that is actually at the biggest tournament of the year and you fall to them in the fashion you did to look as uncoordinated as they did. I mean, obviously they have to do something. It's
like Rare Atom. They don't even play like they don't even have the player quality. Like Kaze's 30 years old, somebody's 28. It's still there's no. They're not playing good CS by any metric at all, and you still lose. That's embarrassing, dude.
It really feels like if you're Fnatic and you have those 5 players versus Rare Atom's 5 players, you could have actually just defaulted every single round. And unless you are handicapping yourself with horrendous mid rounds, spoiler, they did, then you're going to win that game 10 out of 10 times.
Okay, what's interesting is I'm glad actually Bleh went first on that one because that way he could do like the vitriolic side. Because I'll say, I don't think anything he said was incorrect. I think the historical framing's correct. Actually, that is one of the problems Fnatic has. By the way, it's the same problem in a way Complexity has, which is nobody is willing, partly because of Elite as well, it's a bit like the Blame scenario on Fnatic, no one's willing to say Call is what Call actually, if you don't know by the way, I'll give you the black pill on Complexity. They're not trying to be FaZe Clan. They don't even think they are. If anything, they're NA FlyQuest. They're just like, hey, do you want an NA NA team to cheer for. Here's an NA team, the cool guys, you know, maybe they can make it. It's a fucking kids movie. Or if they pull together and do the Flying Ducks Mighty V, maybe they get an upset. Wow, they got top 4, cool. Anything's possible. We're America, yeah, go. But they're not trying to sign at the biggest names. They're not even in the hunt. Notice they're never on some overdrive rumor. Wow, and then maybe Complexity signs fucking Nico. That's never even things that I hinted at. So I would just say, unfortunately, Fnatic themselves, I don't think themselves, you sort of nailed it there, is they clearly don't in their hierarchy of within Fnatic view CS2 as number one. Just mute the mic a sec.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
But, so the problem is, obviously in the modern day, like League of Legends is clearly much more important to them. I'd imagine there's even other, by the way, Valorant, they were one of the best in the world. Like, unfortunately, when they're figuring it out, and I'm sorry, if people don't know, that League of Legends and Valorant, which are Riot games, just tend to give you better, like, rev share, basically. So at the moment, a lot of orgs are sort of cynical. By the way, it's the same reason Cloud9 doesn't go as hard on their CS team. That's obviously clearly bottom of the list. Same thing. Valorant and League of Legends are above it. That's the main games. So unfortunately, they're not treating it like Bleh setup, which is they should be a prestige brand. Like, if people don't know, you think of like Mouse as an old school brand. Mouse should be nothing compared to Fnatic. Like, if anything, Mouse is like, you know, I don't know, fucking like Chelsea, and then Fnatic's like Manchester United or something. We'll talk about like this. You should never, just like Manchester United in football, you think no matter what happens, you've got to always be good though. You've got to always be somewhere people want to play. In fact, that's even a key thing, right? When you have wax signings, you think, bro, what have you done to the brand that people don't want to play for Fnatic? Like, that's supposed to be the dream, especially back in the day when you were Swedish. That was where you wanted to go. You even wanted that one more than NiP. You want to go to NiP because they got bloody Get Right in Forest. You go to Fnatic because it's Fnatic. Like, that's where you go to make your name. So I'm with you on that one. If you want them to be a prestige brand, they haven't lived up to that for years now, and it doesn't quite frankly look like they've put the resources, manpower or money into doing so. In fact, if anything, it looks to me like the last few years they've been doing what I understand, which is like a lot of orgs that are like bigger orgs that have had a history in the game. It looks like they're min-maxing to gamble on getting stickers, and spoiler, they're getting the stickers. So for them, it's working right now. It's actually, the funny thing is, we all hate on the Astralis. Astralis do keep trying to do blockbuster sides, just keep fucking the roster up and not qualified. So in that sense, unfortunately, the industry incentives are telling Fnatic what you're doing is fine. But I agree, how could you be a fan is the problem. You can't be a fan of this lineup because this lineup is like an OG CS lineup. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, you know, it's not going to win, and it's just like, what's this mix of players? Like, there's no identity or theory. But here's the thing, though,
so
where I'll disagree a little bit is I did an interview recently with Ross R, who is the guy who behind the scenes is like sort of playing kind of like a GM role, or he's like part of like, he's basically helping them with scouting, and he's a guy who used to be in Endpoint when they scouted all those talents, like the Nurtures of the world, the Boroses, those players that came up through Endpoint, where they had all those different names that came through and came to top teams. He was basically there, and so he's one of the people, for example, as far as I know, as to why they've got the Matisse guy, who's like the young up-and-comer in their squad. So crucially, he does seem to be someone who's got a Cassad approach, where he's not going to wipe the deck like people want, to start with nothing. He's just going to, piece by piece, ship of Theseus this team to a better squad. So I would say, if you just look at the last year, he has done that. Like, they've gotten Bleh in. By the way, Bleh is mega. He's overqualified to be there. The Matisse guy, actually, it's sad. If people only watch this major, he had a really bad major. He actually is pretty good. When I've seen him play like online and in like the tier 1.5 lands, he's actually a talent. Like, he actually probably will be a good player. And I actually even believe the story that they actually sort of got a bit like NiP with Wrinkle. They got in early there before other teams were going to come for this guy. I've heard like a bunch of people think he should be like one of the better players. The problem they have is, as they're transitioning out of some of the other players, that those players just aren't good enough. Like, as you say, like Body is an IGL, he's okay, but I tell you what, it's not good enough if you want to go to the top level. Like, I do think IGL looked like one of the flaws of this team. Now, by the way, we can fix that immediately. I'll throw some names out there. Snappy's about to be available. You just mentioned him yourself. How about fucking Hampus? If Hampus is out there, he's not playing. These are people where you put them in, that could work immediately. Then I'm thinking the obvious other angle for me is AWP, because I actually think Nork, look, he's fine, he's okay, but he is a bit of a passive AWPer. He's not really like the star AWPer. If you want AWPers, again, some Pius might be available. By the way, there's always up-and-coming AWPers. If you ever just go to like Eastern Europe and just look at FPL, that's actually probably one of the easiest things to recruit, is aggressive AWPer who just flicky style play. Like, I think if you add some of these players to Matisse and Bleh, who can both have, like, Bleh already has star potential, the Matisse guy's just one for the future. Crims at the moment gets by being the veteran, because you do need someone to fill the roles. With that said, I always make this point. People do that thing where they go, oh wow, Crims and Rain still just hanging around. Like, mate, Rain's on another level than Crims. Let's be real about that. You know what I mean? The difference is, Rain isn't who he used to be, but he can still rock up and he can actually look like the best player in the server against top 5 teams, bro. The difference is, Crims, it's more like, you know, he's just like a veteran and he can do his job. That's it. He's not top player. So, in my opinion, you can still keep Crims for the legacy angle as long as you make all the rest of the team dope. So, I think they're like a couple of pieces away. But if you do those pieces, I don't hate the premise. I do agree with you, though. As a summary of the last few years, they were definitely doing that thing where it looks like every 3 months you're changing direction, or who's making the choices, or who's in charge, or you bring a guy in and it's like, oh, we're building around him. It's like, nah, we'll just get someone better. It's like they were doing a really weird angle with what they were doing in the squad before. And I agree, it might have made business sense, but it was terrible to watch. Like, it made you not be a fan, unfortunately.
I think that's gonna be my final thought as well. It's the fact that I don't hate them. I don't hate them because they have a couple of.
No, it sounds like you want them to be good. Yeah,
I want them to be good, and that's where my anger comes. Because you have a couple of good pieces. The major shuffle season is going to happen. Really apply yourselves. You can build something solid out of this. Yeah, that's it.
Yes. In fact, by the way, as a general rule, if a lot of teams really are just going to ignore all those players benched in Falcons, this is the sort of team you should pick some of them up, mate. You could probably like remake these guys. Like a Madden person probably good for this team too. Like, there's a bunch of those players could be way better in a squad like this. Because the key thing is, remember, what they didn't have in Falcons was a Bleh Meth. You've got that already. That's what normally, none of these teams have that normally. So when you've got that player, you could build around that piece. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right, come on then, Maui. What do you think? What are we doing now? I mean, what's your point?
Yeah, my bad point is just, okay, we talked about it already. The fact that Mongolia now has a team that is pretty much vying for titles. I think you can actually safely say that. They're fighting, they're a contender. That's fair to say. And obviously they're primarily Asian. You have mostly European teams. You even have Brazilian teams that I guess MIBR and Furia fell short, but they were both 2-3. So even Pain right there is pretty close. You know, they're 1-3 in this sort of stage. And I just have to say, the bad point I have is North America just has it's just run out of excuses, unfortunately. It's just run out of excuses. When Asia is able to produce a team, when Brazil is able to produce this many teams, I just don't know anymore what North America. There's so many different factors, but the bad point is just like in these playoffs of this major, there are only, as far as I can tell, 3 North American players that are actually competing, and one of them is Mega Cope, by the way. It's NAF, it's Twiz, and it's MongolZ.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, because the MongolZ one is like, people don't traditionally think, they're thinking of Canada and the USA when they met normally. I know what you mean. True.
I mean, sure, you would even say, I would even say Mexico is North America to me, for
sure. But just in terms of the category, sure.
Like, Guatemala is technically just north of the Panama Canal, basically, and so it technically qualifies as our continent, but it's like, we don't really...
But anyway, here's the rule, Maui. If people from any of themselves wouldn't actually be able to answer on who wants to be a millionaire, is that country actually in your region? I'm not sure that we could say that. Yeah, then Guatemala, of course. We Were you guys? I think you're just saying that now because you know how good MongolZ is, guys. Like, I'm trying to inherit him too. It's pretty good.
Well, Maui, so Asia does have donk as well, right?
Okay, there you go. Right. Yeah, technically Russia. Sure. You know, that's debatable in history. Exactly.
Yeah. So
anyway, go on.
I mean, so my bad point is simply put, just that looking at how this whole major shook up and looking at the teams that even made it to this point, like, come on, the best, like, I don't even consider Wildcard to really be an American team when they have 2 guys from North America in Stanislaw and Jaba. They have a South African and they have 2 Swedish guys. The best performing truly North American team at this event was Complexity. You know, they went 2-3. I don't even need to dive headfirst into Complexity and all their faults. I feel like we do that every other episode.
It is every 3 episodes, true.
Yeah.
And it's nearly always bad or ugly, spoiler. Like.
Well, on the bright side now, you don't have to talk about his lineup by the end of the year. 100%
Probably.
It's not going to stay the same.
Okay.
Probably not. But I mean, I think even just peeling it back even more and zooming out more, thinking of the other majority American teams that were here at the Americas RMR, M80.
Is the bad point lack of NA presence is essentially the point here?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right.
It's just the underperformance by the North American teams and the lack of representation, even in terms of, like, you know, budding stars. Like again, like, it's so cope to say MongolZ is a budding North American star also. But, like, from other regions, you could sometimes say in the past, like, oh, like, you know, this guy's interesting, that guy's interesting. Like, I don't know, like a Ben Ted or whatever. You know, you could pick at these people that are, like, basically carrying the torch or, like, showing that there's something that's building there. It's like Jaba was okay. Jaba was okay in the last stage. He really wasn't that good in this stage either. So it's not like we even have a guy to grab onto right now that it's like, oh, this guy can be the future when they are getting pretty much bodied versus top 20 teams at this point. So yeah, overall, NA lack of representation of this major is a huge L.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you pretty much said what I would have said as well. But I think to further emphasize is just the fact that, like you pointed out, right, we actually have an Asian contender, which has never happened before, ever. Brazil's looking so much better. And then the fact that there's not a single NA core I can be excited about. I don't think it's ever happened in the past before, man. But even its complexity. By the way, end of last year, they were looking good. The grand finals of Sydney, Elige was looking fucking insane. You're like, oh, this team can really do something. So it feels like every year there's at least one team or a couple of cores we can be excited about. I think the M80 failure for me was the most disappointing, personally speaking. Although sure, Wildcard did well and all of that, M80 just not making it was a massive, I think, it's slap in the face for the region. So yeah, I mean, nothing more to add to that. I think it sucks. I think it's the worst NA's been in a while.
Unfortunately, I think I'll actually tie this to the point we were just making about Fnatic. And I feel like, first of all, in the case of Call, like I say, I do think at the moment, you have to realise Call isn't a giant esports org. Obviously, it just got bought back by Jason Lake, and they know that Counter-Strike is like prohibitively costly. Here's one thing that people never give Call credit for, which I feel is really unfair. Call is the ultimate example of a team that zigged when they should have zagged, when they made that, like, the Juggernaut team, or whatever it was called, with, like, Blame F and fucking, what's his name, Config. Because if people don't know, Jason Lake, to get those players, those stories are true. He had to, like, fly there like he was doing some, like, fucking NFL signing, like, convince them and then give them enormous salaries. People like Blame F had giant contracts at the time. JKS, if you don't know, he had to go to investors to get them to let him buy out JKS because he thought that was going to be a star player. And so the problem I'm bringing up here is he did actually spend to make, like, a sort of, like, not a super team, but, like, an expensive squad to make his team from what it, because it was comparable to what it was now. Back then, it just didn't have a leash, right? It was just like a whatever NA team that could make a major, but you knew they weren't actually good. He did the gamble that we all want. He invested the millions, but unfortunately, it was all during the online era. And by the time we got to the LAN, this is not even a joke, guys. Remember, right after that first major, the PGL Stockholm, we had that famous blast. That was when Config and Blame F, the second their contracts ended, just went straight to Astralis. Didn't even give him a chance to offer again, and he had nothing again. He had to start over again with this NA core, which basically was the extra salt players, if people remember. So the reason, and he also, remember, he even had coldzera on loan. Like, bro, he signed a lot of fucking big names. Like, yeah, if this was the LAN era, you'd be going, hey, even if it fails, I appreciate you for cooking. So what I want to bring up is this. He did, especially for a couple of years, spend a lot of money just in an era when, sadly, we don't think about that era. It was the online era. We've all wiped it from our memory. And then secondly, he didn't get anything because it was all online. And so the last few years, yeah, he has been min-maxing. It's quite clear they've done the opposite. They've gone like, right, what's the sort of baseline reasonable level? And then we'll gradually go up. And then obviously, look, when the chance to get a leash happens, you get him. But in many ways, that's been the rod for their own back, because having a leash does to this team what Xantares does to Eternal Fire and K-Serata does to Furia. You look at it from that player's perspective and you're like, oh, this is just shit. This guy's way too good. Get better players in. But the other way around is if you took that player out, you'd have a totally different narrative for the team. It'd be like up-and-comers, or can they get to the next level, or, you know what I mean? Like, the joke is, if you take a leash out, like, most of the teams we're talking about, MongolZ are about twice as good. What we're talking about, it's not even a competition. So I agree, that is sad. But the issue for me is this. In the future, I keep saying this every time, I don't know if people want it to be Call, how they figure it out, because unless they right now just sign superstar players, it feels like the other angle, he basically implied it in that interview, if you look at the headline, guys. You know where the Elise headline was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm in a position to win in 2025. Now that is masterful, Maui. You know, I said earlier, people fucking up like threat going, hey, we're not supposed to be competitive till 2025. That's a terrible soundbite. That's a genius soundbite, because what's great about that soundbite is this is politics. That says to every different party exactly what they want to hear. That sounds like he's going to just get Call into a position to win. Or it also sounds like, if you're a player who might want a leash, I'm available, and if you can let me win, hit me up. That's genius. That gives everything to everyone while still not committing to nobody. And, by the way, if you've just lost and you are a truly great player, I also, as a fan, want to hear that from you, that you're not like, hey, I'm okay with this, I'm cool, don't blame my teammates. But also, he didn't say blame my teammates. He just sort of says, like, hey, I understand sort of that this isn't right, and I'm going to do everything I can to get us. By the way, masterful fucking interview headlines. Yeah, that's actually like level. And by the way, this isn't a guy who's always the best at PR stuff, so he killed it on that one. But the obvious problem is, if he ever leaves, you are cooked on this team. You start with very little at that point in time. He's like carrying like 80% of the potential in he. But I know what you mean. Here's the saddest thing, Maui. I do feel like it's finances again. It's people like having to min-max and not being able to put like CS as the #1 game and put all the millions into it. Because if you actually look, it isn't a talent issue, bro. Even though you're right, up-and-coming talent, you really struggle for. Spoiler, they're all in Valorant or playing other games. But if you actually just look at current talent, If we just did the old game, Maui, of take all the players out of the other rosters and build teams from NA, well, we could already make like a Liquid super team, can't we? They're all still there. Lee's, Twist, Snaf. You've got, by the way, if you can have Malbs, we can throw him in there. Stanislaw's out there in the mix. By the way, Nitro still plays CS if people don't know. Just won Fragadelphia. Like, the actual, by the way, even some of the up-and-coming EG players are still out there. Like, I think in theory, by the way, even Automatic's willing to play again if he can get a team. Stewie2K always hints he wants to come back. Like, you could still actually build squads. It's just the main problem right now is I actually feel like this is where NA has a problem no other region has. NA has to figure out, is NA actually about having American fans? Because in my opinion, the two ways you get American fans are obvious. You're either an NA team, you have to be all NA, or you just have to be the best. If you're the best, by the way, they'll accept it too. Like, we're joking now, Maui, about how Liquid's barely NA, because they are. They're just like Twist and Nav. But I'll tell you what, if Liquid was the number one team in the world, every NA player would be a fucking fan of this team. And they'd all be doing that joke of like, well, it's a melting pot in America, and isn't America a country? Which, listen, we all get it, it's corp. We all in the same way. The joke is, Bleh could just do that. Isn't Donk technically on the very west of AG? You know, like, we can all do that joke. So the main problem at the moment is they're in the middle, aren't they? Like, no one's got, they've either got the call team that's just the up-and-comers, or you've got, like, the super team, but Liquid's not good enough to activate the, now we say they're all American clause. So my issue is just that, unfortunately, nobody's trying at the moment to do that. I think at the moment, NA has gone, because the game's European, like European CS has. We don't have countries anymore. That's why Launders has made a whole bizarre, it is just bizarre, sub-brand about racism, which, listen, even though fair play to him, he hasn't got yet, and he keeps leaning into it, but like, I don't know how it ever turns the corner, Launders, and becomes something we can do financially, something with, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that, listen, in a fucked up way, I perversely sort of want him to keep it going, Maui, but I'm so nervous every time I see him do the
his name is Wahengbam the Swami. He's never going to be called racist.
No, he's getting away with it for now, but, you know, fucking hell,
and the thing is that his Twitter community has to be moderated, because sometimes people actually go in there and understand
they actually think it's real,
tongue in cheek, and they actually just get racist.
No, what are you doing, Launders? What are you doing? What are you doing? By the way, I'm already envisioning, guys, as someone from media, the local newspaper article, you know, dangerous online extremists who openly brazen racists holding meetup within the area, wherever Launders land is. Like, you know, this open meetup.
Toronto area.
I know.
That'd be great. In
which they play a video game in which terrorists are celebrated for their victories against the. You're like, fuck, bro. It's right there, Launders. It's right there, bro. So anyway, the point is, though, I do feel like NA people. By the way, I can tell you this from League of Legends. They don't actually give a fuck about being all NA. In League of Legends, if they could just import like the best European player, they do it, and then they even have the goal, like I said earlier, to go, he is in. What do you mean he is the best NA player? And say, oh fuck you, some Denmark, you arsehole. But anyway, we all know Americans and how they do it. So I just think the problem there is I feel like someone would have to almost be like Jason Lake and do it like, I'm going to make the top team, but it's going to always be NA based because that's my vibe. I'm sort of doing the Tabsen. I want German CS to survive, not Tabsen to survive in that analogy. So I think we're also just in a tough spot. I don't know actually what the orgs want to do in that regard, because I have to say, I can't help you with the Liquid one, guys, because if you ask me to make a roster move in Liquid, I'm just bringing in another European, you know what I mean? I'm taking out Ultimate, I'm putting in some bias or something. So that ain't helping you for the NA angle, is it, at this point, you know? The only other angle we can do is, we can also just get really cynical, Maui. We just need, actually, to get a lot of these European players married to people from North America. Get that green card, and then legally, they are American. That's how it works over there, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen once Trump gets in power about that. So,
okay, right. Okay, true. That could be an offset. That's true.
All right.
Right. Then we will go now to my bad point. And my bad point is actually going to be... So we're going to do a NAVI discussion next. So what we'll do is we can bleed into that. But I actually have a NAVI discussion, but it's not about, because I'm assuming since we're doing, it's going to be in the ugly points next, obviously, spoiler away at the end of the bad points. I'm guessing for the NAVI, it's going to be things like that they didn't make the playoffs and they blown it. I actually want to just say, I actually think the narrative is what is bad for my specific point. It's just the narrative around NAVI now. Because I feel like this is an example of, I actually want to take a moment, because I feel like this is the sobering moment where NAVI fans might actually be able to listen when they've had the loss loss is like a splash of cold water in their face to remind them what reality's like. This is why I said that your first major win was a fluke this year, because in that tournament, you weren't a top team. You had no business winning. You even won by the smallest margin ever. Remember, you lost more rounds than you won. That's never happened in Counter-Strike before to win a major. And you had people like Alexi and Dimmer were just bleeding on the stats. They were fucking red numbers all day long. And then inexplicably, it was even key moments. We all remember, it was basically just Jail on Ancient and bloody bit on Inferno in the final and Ancient in the semi. Those are the two individual performances that just won you the major. So that's why, to me, it's a fluke, because it's essentially like almost the most unlikely team that could have won, and in that exact fashion. But in the same way as that team at the time wasn't good, they were never winning tournaments around that era, that was the team that wasn't good and overperformed and won a major. I feel like people are ignoring it's just the same reversed now. This is a really good team now. On paper, they should win the major now. They have all the factors that mean it's possible. Now, by the way, they are a legit team. They have all the qualities. They have all the players. But this event, it went the other way. They had a really bad event where almost everything went wrong. By the way, even that earlier one we were talking about, as much as we're all praising them IPR, everyone's going to remember that iconic Immer swing. That Immer swing, for real. It's like the round. Oh, sorry, that was Furia. That actually is the one that probably just cost you the whole major. That otherwise, you're in the playoffs. You live to fight another day. You have the 3 days off. Blade goes into the tank. You know, you come up with something on Inferno or something, and then you're right back in the mix. Maybe you even had the same bracket, the easiest side, whatever it could be. So I think essentially it's the narrative, because I feel like people are now going to be like, this means like NAVI isn't good enough anymore, or they've dropped off completely, or the what. It's like, to me, you don't call panic stations in the same way as you would never have crowned them after the major. Like, they must be the best team in CS. No one did that. They were like, oh, maybe they're good now. This is an overreaction now. I feel like people are going too far the other way, because people tend to take major results as definitive, basically. They think that just proves like you were a fraud or it's for real or whatever. I don't think they're frauds because they came last year. I actually think this is an example, like I say, this is almost like the universe. This is like karma for winning the other major where maybe you shouldn't have. If I could actually go back in time, I think it'd make more sense if you lost that one to FaZe, then you won this one and you had your era. Like, that would actually sort of be a more satisfying narrative. So I want to know where you guys are at on this one, because I feel like, as usual, people are really extreme when they write the narrative, and I feel like pretty sweet. If you had the tournament tomorrow, you'd still pick NAVI to win it. You know what I mean? Like, they're still mega. They're still a really good team.
I think I'll go last, Mike, because I bleed into my topic as well. Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I guess, like, okay, so for narrative stuff here, I feel like it actually kind of it puts our discussion of NAVI in a really awkward place for the year, because they were the team of the year for me.
They've already won that. Come on, let's be real. Even if Spirit wins the major, like, just wins aren't enough. Like, they were materially the best team of the year already. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think I can really put anybody else in there. I'm trying to think about it. Like, I think, like, for NAVI, for example, they went pretty deep at all of the elite events this year. Well, Kato,
they're still 7th to 8th. Yeah, they almost made playoffs. Yeah.
Cologne, they were in the grand finals. And then even if I consider, like, the Blast events, like the fall final and the spring final, both of them grand final finishes. World final was where they bombed, so a little bit awkward there. But, you know, winning Pro League, winning Rio, they showed they could do it on stages. They showed they could do it in studios. Overall, just played some really solid CS. Kind of a weird dip in form after the major.
Yep.
And actually, when I look at it like this, though, compared to teams like Spirit, G2, and Vitality, all three of those teams only missed a single playoffs of S-tier events this year, whereas NAVI actually missed 2. They were just both back-to-back right after the major. It was Pro League in Dallas. Or, I don't know, is Pro League technically, like, is top 12 playoffs? I don't count that, you know?
Oh, yeah,
like,
true.
But, like, in Dallas, they just bombed out 9th and 12th. So, I think that the door lightly opens for another team to be considered the team of the year, in all honesty, if they win it. Like, because when I think of Vitality, they only missed a single playoffs, and that was Katowice at the very beginning of the year. And then they actually made playoffs in every other tournament that they had this year. And so if they win this event, I don't know. I think you could make a case for it, because literally the percentage of playoffs they made is higher at this point. They made more playoffs this year than NAVI did. So 6 grand finals is impressive also for NAVI, but making playoffs every single time as Vitality and usually losing to the grand final, or usually losing to the eventual champions, I feel like that's similarly impressive. I don't think that's
not bad. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so Vitality might have a chance to actually be the team of the year here too.
Oh, by the way, one last thing I'll throw in as well, because maybe this will help stimulate you actually, which is the other reason also why I don't view this performance as like proof they're just shit, is if anything, this just shows how exceptional what they did this year is, because I'm going to repeat this for the millionth time, but it ties into one of the first points on this show. They don't have a MongoZ, donk, or Ziwu. I don't even think whoever they have is close. Yeah. You pick who it is. Is it Bates? Is it fucking JL? They're not any close. Didn't you see that from JL here? Like, Ziwu couldn't have a tournament like JL had here. Donk can't even like break his hand and have a tournament like fucking Bit has when he had a bad tournament. Like, these players are good players. Those players are exceptional. So I think to be in every final without any of those players, against those players, is fucking insane. Like, if anything, by the way, there's 3 teams out there should always be able to cap you because they're the better players. So I think, if anything, when Navi does badly, Maui, it makes me even more impressed. That's why my joke, if you saw I did the tweet yesterday, was, look, if you want to talk about the kings of CS, you immediately put MongoZ, donk, and Ziwu. The other 2 is Alexi B and Blade. Like, that's their stars. Like, it's kind of dope that like that was able to carry your team this year. It's excellent. Keep going, mate.
That's where I feel like it gets a little bit annoying, because I mean, okay, I'll say this. IGL and Coach of the Year is easily those 2.
Sure. Yes.
So, but I could still make the argument that the Team of the Year might be somebody else by who wins the major. If it's like Spirit win the major, I'm not going to say they were the Team of the Year though, and I'll still keep it Navi. I just have to think about it a lot more. If it's Vitality, I don't think G2 has a real chance at it though. I think it has to be either Vitality or Navi.
I mean, the key for Vitality is they've got the clone, haven't they? So if they have that plus the semi, like, that looks pretty good on Navi. You're right. The aggregate would be very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll see how the major ends up. But yeah, no, for narratives, it kind of ties things up pretty poorly. I think also it would have been just sick for the playoffs if Navi is there to test any of the teams, and then we could see, can the individuals of the other team outplay the brainy, better tactical.
And by the way, before anyone gets mad that we're like not treating all trophies as equal, you all do that to Spirit, guys. You all tell me those Bet Boom titles don't mean anything. Well, then I'm sorry. If you were Navi, I'd rather trade all the fucking ESL Pro League and smaller tournaments to just have that, or like EWC. I'd rather have fucking I Am Cologne. Like, just give me that one. You know what I mean? Like, certain trophies are worth more. I'm sorry. It's just, by the way, it's not even us saying that. The players know it. You can tell which ones they care about, boys. You can tell which ones they go crazy for. So yeah, it's true. That will mean a lot. And unfortunately for them, if you're Navi at the end of the year, look, you got that major, but that was the only major one. That was the only prestige title you got. You didn't get the others, unfortunately. That's just reality. You can't do anything about that.
To Valve, Bet Boom events matter more than IEM, Dallas, Chengdu, any of that. It's a 500K prize pool versus like 250K.
Oh, right, yes, the prize money is what boosting it, right?
Yeah, Bet Boom matters more. Sorry, guys. True. If you bow down to Valve, you bow down to Bet Boom now.
Right, let's do it. As we say, Blair, what we can do is since yours was ugly anyway, we could just bleed into that.
Yeah, like my ugly point is Navi. And the reason I didn't pick it as bad, but rather ugly, is because, yeah, as we just talked about, right, it's just a disappointment as to what could have been a truly an incredible year. Because I was looking at the last time we had a Team of the Year. For me, it was FaZe. It was FaZe in 2022 and what they pulled off. Yes. Holy trifecta of Cologne, Kato, and the Major. They stumbled in Rio, absolutely. Like, that's going to be always a black mark against them. But if you look at all the other events, let me take a look here. All the other events they had deep runs on. EPL, they won in EPL.
They're always in playoffs,
Yeah, they're always in playoffs. And then even the Blasts.
Almost won Blast 4, right?
Yeah, Blast 4. Just incredible God tier run. And the fact that even if Rio failed because they had Cologne and they had Katowice, I'm like, you had that. Now, if you look at the Navi side, sure, they won the major, fluke, anomaly, whichever word you want to use for that. I think it was anomalous, and then they dipped in form, right? EPL happened and whatnot. But in spring finals, we saw them come back again. And my big question was, all right, there's going to be the player break. How are they going to come back? Can they really become? I mean, match what they did in the major, and they did. We see, sure, a lot of best of ones. I'm not a fan of the format, but they still got the win right there, right? But my biggest problem is they haven't had any of the prestige marquee event wins apart from the major. And coming in here, Blast, fine, it's okay, it's all right, as long as they deliver the major. It's just the fashion in which they lost. Like, I'm talking about the maps they lost to. Some of the teams were very, very, very one-sided. It was painful to watch, right? And even sure, the MIBR comeback was great. They again showed a lot of mentality. Also, by the way, this is the team who has had the strongest mentality of any team this year. Yes. When I say that, with all the criticism that the players had to deal with, Imma, because he was talking shit the first half of the year, and everyone, you're shit, you should get cut. But no, they came back stronger, literally came back stronger. some of the most insane comebacks we've seen so far, apart from their phase game against Liquid. They've had like 3 or 4 mental comeback games, incredible mentality. And yet when it comes down to a year legacy defining event, right? They are the one sore thumb sticking out, the #1 team not making it to a super giga stacked major playoffs. It's rare you see that. Usually you see maybe a couple of teams, 3 teams not making it, and that's fine. But this is like, you're the only one who didn't make it, right? And that's shocking. And even the heroic game, if you look at it, it's like, sure, they destroyed them on Nuke, but man, they got kind of schooled in the first map on their own map pick, Mirage right there. So if we give praise to Blade for being the best coach right now in the past few years, which I 100% agree with, and Alexi B being the best IGL, you know you're going to get studied. You know teams are going to be coming for you, right? And you've done a fantastic job making a team which is more than the sum of the parts. I keep repeating this. They're more than the sum of the parts, to an extent that like Neo and Morpheus is like, they're starting to believe. They're starting to believe that they actually are fucking good. You're watching Wonderful. You see even JL yesterday just coming alive, and you're like, holy shit, these guys really believe they're stars and they're playing like it.
Yes.
But they failed when it mattered the most. And no matter how I look at it, no matter how empathetic I want to be with them, bottom of the line is you had it in your hands. Even dude, just making it to the playoffs would have cemented their legacy.
Oh, for sure.
Even getting top 4, because FaZe didn't make. Fuck playoffs. They bottomed out in Rio, right?
Yeah.
If you make playoffs or even top 4 of this major, even if you don't win it, man, team of the year, incredible stuff. Blade, GOAT coach, Alexi B works wonders, the king in yellow, give him all the titles, all the names. But they failed, and that's ugly, and that makes me sad.
By the way, if you want, Maui, I'll take this and you can pick up. Do you want me to go?
I mean, I could.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
I mean, I was gonna just get more into like the tactics side of things and kind of like what I think about it. I just feel like a few teams, when I watched them play against Navi, came out swinging, and everybody says that phrase, you come at the king, you best not miss. They just didn't miss. They all didn't miss. They collectively hit. They all collectively hit in the ways that they were supposed to hit. Everybody. It's like this. If you ever play, I don't know, when you're playing like qualifiers in any kind of region, and you have some random team, like there were times when I was playing like tier 2, when I was playing for like in like tier 2 ECL level, and complexity would be in the qualifier for whatever reason. I am going to play the best Counter-Strike of my goddamn life because I'm against complexity in the server. Like that's just what it was. Okay. And that was the old one with EA and Stanislaw. And like, that's how it feels, I think, for everybody playing against Navi. It's like the same thing if you're the hottest team in the NBA, like everybody's playing at 110%, and you might be on like a back-to-back to like, this is like your 4th game in a week type of stuff. And I just also think like, I don't think Blade was able to, unfortunately, like once again reinvigorate the team, come up with new strategies. Like it looked similar to what I have seen for the whole year, unfortunately. And to be the most studied team in terms of your overall tactics of any team, like the most studied people this year were Blade and Donk, in my opinion. Donk for POV individual performances, Blade's overall game planning for Navi. And many teams actually tried to mimic what Navi were doing. And then I think I started seeing people tweak it throughout the year. Like, famous example of this is that like almost every Navi round on Mirage starts with like a top mid smoke and a window smoke instantly. And then they send like Ema underpass, Alexi B top mid, but you don't know what the other 3 guys on the team are doing. You just don't know. Are they with the mid? Are they going to do an A play out of that? You have no idea. But I think people, even with that kind of starter and that kind of conditioning, I just think that teams started to know, okay, we know where 2 of your guys are going to be. We know what these 2 smokes are going to be. And they worked in the lab long enough to come up with those kinds of answers. And Blade thought that his starters were practically so undefeatable that like what else is he supposed to do? Like what he's going to innovate with those other guys, but I think he needed to maybe even rethink things more. I when I watched Spirit play, for example, at this event, I saw starters that I haven't seen from them all year. So I saw them trying different stuff out. So I don't know. I don't think they went into the lab with the same sort of mentality that they had. And also, more importantly, and probably even like whereas that one is a little bit more making an assumption based off of some slight strategies that I'm noticing. Jesus Christ, they just couldn't even shoot. Like Wonderful in these series couldn't even shoot people. Like Gone is his case as being like an elite opper. Like he's just not. He's not an elite opper. He's not there with Modesty. He's not there with Zywoo. He's not there with Shiro. I'd take Torzi today over him after what I just saw in the last stage for both of those players. And I'd say also JL. Like JL was just not even present in these games. You know, he got battered by Insani, didn't change up how he wanted to do things. He got battered by most of the teams that he played. Emo was practically the only guy that was holding up his end of the bargain completely.
The irony of it all.
Yeah, for the guy that, and in some ways it's like,
even though, as we said, he'll only be remembered as the guy who whiffed on that swing and he blew the major for them. You're right. That's what will be remembered, sadly.
Oh, I mean, he had one huge giga fuck up against MIBR in that final round of the game.
Like that's one. Yeah.
No, but the thing is, he was one of the better players at the tournament. Though, like, it's not even his fault. That's the joke in it.
If everybody played like Ema in that final series against Heroic, they win it.
Yes,
so
agreed.
that's not on him. That's definitely not on him. So
no, yeah.
I feel bad for Alexi too, because I think Alexi was doing what he could with what he had. But sometimes those CT sides were just diabolically bad. And that's not even a fault. That's not a fault to me as much on Blade or on Alexi. Like, Wonderful had chances. He had great chances to hit shots that I have seen him hit all year. He failed to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of individuals maybe not having the amount of prep time that they would have wanted, and just, like, they just ran out of steam. They just
gonna add one more thing. It's also like, and this is not like just complete indictment of him, because this guy seems to be someone who wears his heart on his sleeves and all that. But JL, you know, he's a guy of the people, right? He likes tweeting stuff and all of that. And I said it. I said the Navi have the strongest mentality in current day Counter-Strike. But for me, like, post that game, I don't want to read too much into a tweet, but even a tweet, it's more like, from what I could gather, it was like, oh yeah, they were in my head. Like, it was in my head. I joked about Insani and how we abuse him all that, but it's like, man, like, this is going against your, you know, who you are, who you portray yourself as. So what are you? Are you that mentally strong, looking at the camera, fucking around, I'm going to fuck you up no matter what you say? Are you that guy, or are you someone who is going to be cowed? Because if you're going to be cowed, it will have an effect. Like, Counter-Strike at this level, it's a mental game as much as how fast you can fucking shoot. And if you're going to play scared, or you're going to start doubting yourself, you know, you can't be the best player if you're going to have that at moments like this. So you look at the GOATs, the greatest we've had, no matter how bad it is, they will step. Simple example, FaZe yesterday. It looked like it was done. It looked like it was fucking over and out. And then you have fucking Rain putting up a hell of a showing on Duster, saying like, if we go out fucking swinging, right? We would do that. And Robs, who's been fucking dog shit so far, he just goes unplayable. That's a mentality this guy's been trying to emulate, and you need to have that. So I now start asking questions about performance coach, who's great, by the way. He's done a fantastic job, but it does feel like, apart from the tactics and individuals struggling aim-wise and all that, I feel like mentally they were the weakest at this in the final couple of games they played.
All right, I'll pick up by using the JL point you say there. The obvious joke angle, because first of all, the more serious point is that also just shows why Navi was insanely lucky. Because, like, if you were to make a new award, Big Game Player of the Year, GL would be on the nomination list. Like, look, maybe, I don't know, maybe still, like, MongoZ would win it or something. But, like, GL would be, like, top 3 on that fucking list, unironically. Like, almost every time you had, like, a big game where someone needed to step up as the old American sports. This guy did it. And by the way, he did it in a way where I don't ever think he actually was that superstar player, but he could play like it in the big game, though. And actually, normally, he was the guy with the balls when some of the other star players were the ones falling apart on the Vitality, the G2, the FaZe clans of the world that were against him. But my joke would be, so obviously, by the way, that shows how lucky they were, that one of their best players of the year and the major MVP of the previous major was probably their worst player at this major, and actually just had almost bad games every single time, pretty much. The joke angle would be, it's exactly because, as you said, he got in his own head. Normally in JL's head, there's nothing. It's just JL kill, JL grug, and JL is shooting, haha, JL's bullets are killing, haha, now JL has kill, now JL kill. Then all of a sudden, he experienced like, I don't know, in this case, the major was like the monolith in 2001. When he touched this major, suddenly a second voice appeared, and but maybe JL is not better. Maybe Insani is better. Who is talking? JL is playing. Who is talking? And he's on comms. Alexi, stop talking. JL is clutching. Jill, what are you talking about? We never said anything, bro. Just the self-awareness to now think, was he the best? And was that right? That destroyed him completely. Before that, he had pure animal awareness where he just existed in the moment, single-pointed focus. So just get back to that. Basically, if you actually are the NAVI performance coach, just take JL to an animal sanctuary somewhere and have him just frolic with his kind. And then once he gets back to nature, like the NAVI, see, he's on Navi, like the Navi in Avatar. He has to be one with nature. At the moment, he's more like with all those technological evil humans that wanted to like harvest the unobtainium. And by the way, I like the way even as I'm explaining this, I'm realizing how shit the law of Avatar is. Now, even to even say unobtainium, I know it's just garbage in it anyway. So anyway, whatever. Bringing it all back. Like that is actually a real point. No, here's why I agree with this is an ugly point. Because like I say, I think people are going to think this is definitive and it like proves this roster's busted or they're fucking their shit now or they've been figured out. No, like I'll even pick up on the Maui point there because it's one I always used to make about Astralis. The reason Astralis probably is the GOAT lineup in CSGO isn't even the championships. It's that after you're on top for 3 months, everyone is studying your demos. So normally what happens is you fall off again and then you adapt to what they do and then you come back and it's like a chess match, so back and forth, right? Astralis, I always say, it's almost like they were able to shadow box themselves, get ahead of the adaptation, make the adaptation before someone like Liquid even could get the counter to them and then just still on top. And so as a result, it looked like they were just static the best. But I can tell you, Zonic and Glaive were fucking working overtime in those demos. They were living inside. And I tell you what, I can tell Alexi B and Blade have done that. Because that's the other thing. They're not really running. Like, if you go back to when they won EWC, they started this crazy run. They're not really running the strats from then now, guys. Like, they've changed up everything. They've even, by the way, during that run of all those finals, pivoted, like, their map priorities about 2 or 3 different times. Think about it. They started as, like, it's only Mirage. Then it was like, actually, we're a Dust 2 team. And then they were, like, pivoting. Maybe they're ancient. Like, they've actually gone where they need to. They even play the Anubis now if they have to. They just go where they need to, which is what truly great teams do. So that's why I agree. You look at Alexi B and Blade, they have just killed it this year. They've absolutely killed it. I also agree with the mentality part. When you don't have the Ziwu donk, right, every player tells you that lie of like, I don't look at the names, I just play, everyone dies in the server. That's cope. They all do. They all know when it says simple in that top right-hand corner, their butthole gets way tighter in that 1v1 after that one, as opposed to if it said fucking Smiths, then they might go, I might white Pete Sweek on this one, like, we all know that's real. Remember, Navi never ever had the donk MonteCristo Ziwu, and they were nearly always playing the donk MonteCristo Ziwu team. So one, you already know in theory the best players always on their team, but you would never believe Navi players thought that way. That's why actually that performance woman probably did do a job for the rest of the year. Because if I look at this team, I always think the Cologne final where they lost actually shows that mentality is impossible, bro. Because in all of those games, they were pulling like miracle rounds. I always think that Dust 2 game is incredible. If you don't know, guys, off the top of my head, I feel like they won something mental. Like 4 numbers disadvantage retakes of the B bomb site on fucking Dust 2. Like, mate, if you get even one of those in a game against Vitality, like, count yourself lucky. They were just winning them for fun because all the players somehow had no fear and would just like act in unison and do whatever the call was and just go for it. And as a result, it was like incredible CS to play. Like, actually, it was addictive to watch that level of like team play, working off calming, all that shit. So I do think like you actually, it's the other way around. What this team accomplished this year is insane. But the real problem they have, and also I'll throw this in there, when they, as you say, when they got good, which at the very end of the season, they showed that glimpse by making that final, losing to Spirit at that blast, right? I can tell you, everyone in the world wanted a roster move, and it was obviously Imma. Everyone's shit was either like, Simple comes back and he's either a rifler for Imma or he's an AWPer for Wonderful. You pick which. And by the way, I've already said this in the past. I think that was the original plan. It's just they won the major, so Blade decided against it. And I've already told this story. I've heard Elige and maybe even other star players have contacted Navi and been like, can I have that spot? Like, hey, I'm pretty fucking, can I get that spot? And I'll tell you what, Blade must have the biggest balls or self-confidence ever to double down and go, actually, I'm sticking with the Imma guy I just picked up. Yeah, the guy who's had like fuck all tournaments, I'm sticking with him. I think something about the chemistry or what I'm doing with him or the role I'm bringing him into, which by the way, Blade always tells you in his interviews what he's doing, guys. So he said ages ago he was going to make him into like a secondary voice and so that sounded laughable for months and months and months. Just like if you go back to 2021 when they were second to Gambit, he said something like, I need 6 months to get the roster up to speed with Bit. If you ever go and look, unironically, 6 months is like performance when they win the major after that. It's like Blade's like one of the only guys who isn't telling you cope or some like propaganda. He actually just sort of telling you his plan. It's just the problem is because he's Blade, you don't have the vision he does. You don't know how he's going to get there. But I'll tell you what, he fucking gets there. So that is an insane gap. Like that is move of the year right there. It's actually not making a roster move. Because remember, we all know from watching CS, they could have made a roster. Like maybe they get Elise, by the way, who's a better player. Maybe it's just a worse team though. Maybe it doesn't function. Maybe Elise wants different things. Who the fuck? Maybe it makes bit worse. I'm just speculating, but you can never know in CS. So already insane gamble to stick with it and then have it pay off like this. But sadly, to bring it all the way back, I do agree though. The biggest problem is this. Unfortunately, what has fucked them is that they did win most of the tournaments except the major that aren't the ones that are that important. Like, for example, EWC has amazing prize pool, but everything else you can poke holes in. Like, the format, you didn't play many matches. Also, you've just done up the whole roster mania because it's after the player break. You can even throw in there the last one. It's not like the stage setup isn't like a Cologne, is it? It's not as daunting. It's not as intimidating. It's not. So, unfortunately, the money looked great. For the Valve rankings, EWC looks dynamite. It'd be like the 5th best event of the year, but none of us count it even the same as, like, quite frankly, you know what? I'm not a big fan of Brazilian events, but I'll tell you what, the atmosphere in IM Rio looks fucking daunting, mate. That'd probably take some balls to win, to go out there against Furia or to be Mouse or something. That takes some stones. But the problem is, now at the end of the year, this is why every trophy isn't equal. If you'd have just gotten one of those others, if you'd have gotten that Cologne one, everything's different. If you'd have gotten the fucking... If you made playoffs, it can all that to help a little bit. So, yeah, there's a tiny bit. I can criticise them. We can do that. But I do think, actually, it's a good ugly point because I do feel like people are going to go too far. But it's like, you have to, with this team, it's the other way around. I can criticise Vitality because I feel like on paper, you're supposed to win everything. If I start the year over again and I tell Thorin, Navi does all this, that in itself will be like, but how? How's that even possible? This lineup, 6 finals in a row? No way. Like, I would bet against that all day. So actually, I think people are going to miss what they did do. This was fucking insane this year. Low-key, I'm a massive fan of this year. I agree it could have gone better, but I'm a big fan of what they did. I think it was fucking dope. I also think they sort of showed something about CS that actually, like, has made the game legit. Like, when FaZe was on top, it's because we all think they had an amazing roster at the beginning of the game. This team's like, they are the team who figured out how CS2 was played. At the exact time that we were all like, it's just random. It's like, they were I'll give you one last reason, which is actually a banger no one's thought of. Here's what tells you how incredible what Navi did this year with what I think is an underpowered roster. Their two main rivals, guys, are potentially the two teams who are the favourites to win this major, G2 and Vitality, who both have some of the best players, if not the best player in the world, and even if they win the major, they're both probably going to change roster because of Navi. I'm pretty sure it is because of Navi, because I think what happens is when they see that Navi roster and they keep losing to them or having like close games, they're like, bro, our lineup isn't good enough. Like, they're a real team and we're just really good players. Like, I think, unfortunately, no matter how good G2 is, Nico and MongoZ are looking at it like, it's not, we haven't got the right team though, have we? Like, we're good players, but we could change it up. That is a testament to Navi right there, bro. That is crazy that, like, they're making all their rivals basically role swap or like fucking bringing new... That alone tells you what they did this year. Like, they broke everyone. They just didn't win the major at the end. That's all.
That's why it's ugly.
Right, Maui, what is your ugly point?
Mine is the fact that the game has just become ridiculously T-sided.
Even the stats, actually, most teams just have better stats on T-side, right?
Everybody's better at T-side.
Yeah.
Everybody's better at T-side now. I think that's... I looked through... So, for example... Because that Statsmeister guy just did a post, right, of all the T-sides, right, Maui, and most of the top teams are like 60 to 70% win rate on T-side, which is bonkers. That is insane, T-side. Okay, I don't know what Statsmeister is doing because he just copy-pastes things from H.
No, he probably did, but I mean, that was just posted the other day.
That is all he does, but I found this on my own without using his Twitter account. But
if people want to see it, just go to that Twitter account, you'll see the thing,
it's just that the... 10 of the 16 teams at this stage of the major had above 50% win rates on their T-sides, and 5 of the 8 teams at the World Finals had above 50% win rate. By the way, these teams are not all winning.
No, of course not.
This is obviously the number should probably be more like 50% if the sides are even. But in fact, some of these are losing teams who have better T-sides than they do. Like, they're winning more on T-sides. So it's just that I looked at the map stats also. And it's not just like, oh, there's a lot of Anubis necessarily being played. Like, Anubis has shown up 4 times out of 54 maps that were played in this stage. So it's not even really a significant amount. It's the fact that Inferno is incredibly T-sided. Yes, Anubis is also, but Ancient has become T-sided, Mirage is slightly T-sided, Dust 2 has always really been T-sided, and Nuke, which was really such a good stronghold for great defensive teams, is 50.3% CT-sided versus 49.7. The only team that's or the only map that's really significantly CT-sided is 3 maps that were played of Vertigo. And in that case, I just don't even really count it. And it was 53.5% CT-sided. So, no, it's just that the game right now is so... It's just that if you are bunching up with a group of crazy fraggers, it's so ridiculously hard for defenders to do anything about it. And I want to say, like, this Molly change was just terrible. Like, the Molly change has just been so bad for CT sides. Like, banana control this is why Inferno has a 60% win rate for Ts at the major so far. The banana mollies are just horrendous. Like, you almost will always lose banana control, and one of the best strats you can call once you get banana control is executing B, and all you have to do is have one guy watch your flank. Like, there's so many places you can hide in alt mid, in the little underpass pit, in the middle of mid. You could even be holding on the T-steps. You could even just be sitting at the bottom of banana, because clearing that out late round is pretty difficult if you're retaking the CT. So, no, it's a lot of the maps have just been ruined because the Molotovs are so small for the CTs. And the little bit of price decrease, the $100, that's just not significant enough. And the $100 cheaper for the A4, most people still use the M4 A1S. These little changes that Valve went for to try to balance the game out just didn't lead to any significant... It wasn't significant enough, unfortunately. So I think that, like, right now as it stands, okay, I looked at it, like, 18% of kills are still with the A1S silence. Like, the M4A4 is only 4% of all kills in the game. Like, the A1S is being used about 4 times as much, over 4 times as much still, and it was still the same price. So nothing, effectively, the only change that happened where we were like, okay, this is a step in the right direction, were these little price changes in the A4 and the Molly. But because they nerfed the Molly with a $100 price decrease, it actually just made it more T-sided.
Yes.
Like that singular change. I mean, that I guess it's a 2-factor change to the Molotov. Actually, just made the game more T-sided. And when we were already complaining about how T-sided this game was, how the economy favors them. On top of that, the Galil is just so good. Yeah. The Galil is just way too good. Like, watching
and you can run with it, bro. That's the worst thing. You can move with it like an Arc 10.
Yeah, no, the Galil is like watching Insani with a Galil is like watching him with an M4 on T side. It's like, it's so ridiculous.
Put it this way, the obvious one, Maui, is just compare Galil and FAMAS. They're supposed to be equivalent weapons, night and day. That's not even a conversation, mate.
Yeah, the FAMAS doesn't even come up on like the top 10 most used weapons in this stage of the tournament. Like, the MP9 does show up, but it's even lower than the Galil. Yes. It is lower than the Galil. So it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like they just need to change. If I were Valve at this point, actually, you know what? I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'll come back into this discussion with what I would do.
Sure.
Okay. I'll go. There are a few things here. Firstly, by the way, Vertigo's going to go out. Train's going to come in. That's going to be even more T-sided as well. That's going to be easily more T-sided. Yeah, outside is almost impossible to hold right now. My biggest gripe with the Molotov, the incendiary changes, because it felt like it was a direct reply or a fix for Inferno's banana. Instead of fixing one part of one map, Valve said, no, we're just gonna nerf the incendiary, which to me, it's so insane they've done this. There was no one is asking for an incendiary nerf. Just say, hey guys, banana is a little too claustrophobic. And they went for this as an answer. To me, I really don't know why. I think they should revert it 100%. Even the price as well, if you're gonna go back to it. Also, this is the counter argument though, Maui. Like, you remember like when the M4A1 got nerfed a while ago, right? Like the damage fall off basically.
Yeah.
It does feel like a lot of people have forgotten about it. It's kind of one of those weird things where the Krieg was the best gun for a long time and no one really discovered it and no one really thought about it. The A1 is significantly horrendous when you're taking a long range duel against, forget an AK, it was an insta headshot, but against Galil, for example. Nice. The A4 and by the way, I'm talking about like Dust Too Long, fighting long, all these outside of Yard. A lot of A1 fights are actually, you are at a disadvantage easily, but people still stick with it because it's better close range, it's the silencer, it's more for laser beam and all of that. So I feel like for a lot of players, at least at a high level, they're like, yeah, we're going to stick with the A1, but guys, you're inherently hurting yourself when you play outside yard, for example, having the A4 gives you a much better chance of winning those deals. So I feel like that could have skewed a little bit of the data. I personally feel that that is one thing which goes against your argument. But apart from that, yeah, I feel like the way the game is right now. Also, by the way, so many players, tier 2, tier 1.5 players, when you watch them on the CD side, they don't jiggle enough. They're just still holding static angles, getting immediately fucking smacked down. You look at the best players in the world, you just watch the way they play. Just mobile, very active, right? So I think it makes for interesting Counter-Strike, but I've never been the one who says, oh, Counter-Strike should be CT-sided or T-side. I love the fact Nuke was fucking CD-sided. I love the fact Trim was fucking CD-sided because that meant the T-side to do something really cool and different to just get those 4 or 5 rounds. Not everything has to be perfectly balanced. And I think it has completely swung in the other direction right now, which I agree. And by the way, with Train coming in, it's going to get even worse.
Yeah, on the last point you say there, that's another thing. I never ask for, like, this is why I don't want individual maps to be 50-50. I want the pool to be what balances it. I want you to have, like, the old school Train and Nuke, which used to be the CT-sided ones in 1.6, but then you had the Dust 2 and the Tuscan with the T-sided. So the point is, everyone's style gets a map it can perform on, and you have different strengths at that point. Like, spoiler, then I'm probably going to want an individual star on the team that plays Dust 2 and Tuscan, but maybe I want the team and communication aspect on the CT-sided map. I agree with you. I actually wrote a Substack piece like this when I first launched my Substack, so it'll be behind the paywall now, but anyone who's actually got like subscription of that, you can go back and look it up. It's called Make CS CT-sided again. And the reason I actually argue along these lines, like as a general rule, if you look at the history of CS, I think it's better when like the map pool tends towards CT side because of things like, first of all, in CS, the CT economy is more expensive. So anytime Ts are dominating, all you're going to see is not that like they're just winning gun rounds. You're just going to see T economy destroying CTs and CTs constantly one gun or like 2 pieces of util behind, or making the nightmare decision of like, do I get no gun and the util and the kit, or do I get a gun and no util? Like that decision sucks. And if that happens too often for CT, you're just making the game not very good. I'm afraid it's not that it'll be like good or bad. It'll just make CS worse, unfortunately. Then you've got the fact that like, I do think the harder it is to win T rounds, like classic examples being like old school Nuke, it makes more of a premium though on having a great IGL that can get you the T rounds. Like if people, one of the other reasons we all think Astralis 2018 is the GOAT lineup is they came along when Nuke was CT sided and used to just win the T side consistently. Like that might be the most mind blowing like fucking piece of trivia of all time. Like they used to just, they could lose the pistol and win T round T side of fucking Nuke when it was the most CT sided map in the game. And then lastly, no, I've got 2 more points here. One, similarly, when you make winning T rounds too easy, like it's just like having better aimers or overwhelming someone, that inherently makes it so you have to play less of what I think most people enjoy the most about Counter-Strike, which on T side is the fucking push-pull dynamic. Normally, this is why Inferno, you're right, is the one that nails it, Bleh, because they're thinking of the era when a lot of top teams didn't want to play Inferno because they said CT side basically is solved and it's a nightmare. T side is you just go, you throw the same piece of utility, you wait it out, you try and like wait, you get a jiggle, does he go there? If not, you poke somewhere else. And then basically T side is almost playing like the way FaZe played that shitty end of the Boston Major where you're just waiting for someone to give you the round, you don't get it, and then you're like, right, well fuck it, I guess we just rush a site at the end of the round. That wasn't CS, right? But now they've gone too far the other way, and now CT's the nightmare. Now it's all saving, and people like what used to make it great back in the day was what you were actually doing if you were a good team on those maps is you were trying to just force the rotation from one of the sites and then just hit that site 4v2 or 4v1, and then you just hit the site with trading, and you always get in. Like there's a logic to that, and then the CTs know that, so they're gambling. Do I take this what looks like the initial thing and rotate? Do I not? Will that be the fake? That back and forth, that chess match is what everyone who's an analyst loves. Everyone who's a color commentator is watching the game for. Now, some of these rounds are just someone just peeked with the peeker's advantage and instantly shot a static CT in the head who was holding a corner, and then the other CT goes, well, fuck, I'm behind a smoke, I save. That's the end of the round. People know Inferno's the map that did this. There were literally rounds where an opening kill means it is a 4v5 save. That is whack. Nobody wants to play like that, and nobody wants to, look, maybe, all right, Jim, you're the exception, but nobody wants to play like that, and nobody wants to watch that. I'll tell you that part. So I do think, sadly, that just shows you CS is a little bit busted. roasted. Like, and by the way, you're right about all the economy shit. I even thought about this as well. Not only is the FAMAS worse than the Galil, it's like $300 more or something like. That's the worst part as well. And then the Cindery Molotov one is criminal, right? How can my shit be more expensive and worse? Like, in that scenario, the irony of this is this, Valve. If anything, you could make a better case that CTs should have the more powerful molly. Like, they're the ones that have to stop you coming in the site with lower numbers. The Ts are just using it to flush someone out of a spot, usually. Like, actually, you could argue you've got it the wrong way around on that one, mate. You should flip the dynamic and the pricing even. So, look, you can fix it all, luckily, because notice most of this shit isn't like remove the gate. Maybe map pool would help, but I also think some of this is just pricing. If you price, I always say incentives are the best things you can do in CS. As we're talking about, like the Krieg, boys, most people didn't even like the Krieg, but once it became very good, they knew if I want to win, I'm going to buy it. So I think if you price things right, it can fix the game in that sense. But I definitely agree. I think if it becomes 2C-sided, people think that's fun in casual, but I think for Pro CS, it gets worse, actually. I think the games become worse.
Also, like, surely they have the technology to replicate the 1.6 FMS in a Glock burst. Like,
you'd think
burst
so, right?
fire. Look, this might be something completely impossible, but man, it was viable. That's why it's viable in 1.6.
Yeah.
Remember Zneil, bro? Zneil used to fucking own people with the fucking FMS. Just like great, insane aim, a little bit of recoil control. So sure, you have 25 bullets and a lower rate of fire, but it was lethal. Now, if you can get that burst fire working for the FMS, suddenly now we're cooking, right? It's the price point's fine. You can go up against Galil. The CDs are getting fun. The fact that even with the incendiary change, Inferno still plays like that, I think it's very telling that Valve this time you didn't cook well.
Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I would just expand. I would expand the molly radius once again.
That's a good
I think
one.
that's like the first small change I would make.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me of a Chad complaint as well. Bro, here's another example of something they made that T-sided. You can save inside the B bomb site and survive the bomb behind those boxes. Chad is right to be mad about that. Bro, that is mental. In every version of CS, you have to die if you're inside the B bomb site and the bomb goes off. I can't be that just gives the T an advantage. Like in that case, I don't have to exit and get shot by the exit. Even if you're Valve watching, you're gonna go, that's a minor thing. It is minor, mate, but these things add up. They matter. They do.
Also the fact that on the flip side, you have Nuke and Ancient, where
which are the opposite,
you have to run a marathon, a fucking marathon, and I still die, right?
No, there's times on Ancient you're dying, like, am I even gonna die? Where even am I? I don't even know. The bomb, I know, it's like 7 walls.
The most egregious thing is, I'm very sure this is just about changing a fucking value. This is just about changing value. Unlike burst fire, whatever. Must be. So, yeah, that too.
Anubis also has a really small bomb radius.
Yes.
Generally. Yeah, you can just be right outside B basically and get away. But also it ties into why the worst part about this, and I have to now like make this an overarching point.
Go on.
This is why Snacks can call whatever the fuck.
As if this comes back to Snack smoking. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. Go on.
He can just call whatever the hell they want. I mean, like, dude, you're gonna bust down their economy at one point or another. You're gonna just use Tech 9.
Here's what I love is the idea that Maui, if asked to present to Valve why CS is 2T-sided, he would just put like a picture of Snacks holding all those blast trophies. Like, look at that shit. How's he doing that? This is wrong. Like, I love it.
It ain't right. It ain't right. Okay. It's just not. I mean, the actual, like, the fact that you can call. I'm gonna say this. Like, this is a point that we're gonna get out of the topic a little bit. The reason I also think G2 is gonna win this major is because, dude, why would I call tactical CS when the crowd's gonna cheat every single time anyways at this event?
True.
Like, dude, if call like G2 calls, just call for a straight sight hit out of spawn every round like they do. Just call for the sight hits because what's gonna happen in the semifinal? I swear this is gonna happen. We're gonna see G2 run the most basic, mind-numbing T-side you've ever watched. They're going to get like 9 rounds on it. Vitality are starting to pull off this comeback on their own T-side. But Apex is actually going to be too smart for his own good. He's going to call a great strat. It's going to lead to a good flank. Flames is going to get, or Spinks is going to get into this sick position, flanking 2 players from G2. Crowd is going to start cheering, roaring. They turn around and shoot him instantly. Okay? What's the point of inserting people into actually strong positions at this event if the crowd is just going to actually give it all away? So that's kind of an unrelated point. But yeah,
I think the crazy thing is you just need to turn off the X, right? You know, when it comes to these moments, it's that simple. ESL figured it out.
They do.
They should do it.
No, dude, because G2 is the home favorites of this event, right?
No, I'm saying they just need to take off X-ray, basically.
Yeah, I'm saying I would agree for all games they should do it at this event.
For all games.
The crowd has been proven to be untrustworthy with these kinds of moments, but I will say for G2 especially, it's just going to be like Nico, please! Like, just like
there was a guy. There was literally a Chinese girl or guy. I forgot which map it was. I think the NAVI game. Literally goes up to the mic and go. I'm like, what the fuck? Insane. Unreal. Anyway.
Dude, yeah, no, I'm saying that's why, like, if their T side's this good, something's wrong with T side.
No, I'll tell you what then. Mine's a good one to end on, actually, because we haven't particularly talked about Spirit on this episode. So I'm just going to say my ugly. Notice I'm putting ugly, not bad. Because I actually think, to tie into a point I've made a million times for Maui, so he's heard it before, but here's the angle, Bleh. I'm probably going to do like a written piece on this. I actually think, in a weird way, a lot of the narratives, specifically around Donk and Spirit, are very unfair. Because I always tell people this. What made their team... You know, I said that example earlier, how if you're like Eternal Fire, no one really looks at the fact that you're open commerce and Wikid's doing well. Because what they do is they go, oh, you're a prison for Xantares, so you just look at it from Xantares' POV. You look at the same thing in Liege on complexity, right? So similarly, when you have this team, Spirit, my take is this. In a weird way, I think it would have been a lot fairer to them if they didn't get Shiro and they'd just had Artfrost, because he, like Zontix and Donk, was like a rookie who's an up-and-comer. By the way, he's actually a pretty talented player. He just isn't Shiro, by the way. He's not like a bona fide already world-class player. And so my problem is that, combined with winning a prestige out of the gate, made that the standard we've judged Donk and all of Spirit on the whole year. So Spirit has been treated like they're actually shit this year. And at the end of the year, you look at it and it's like, bro, you actually, if they make a run deep in this major, they've had a fucking phenomenal rookie year for a team like all youngsters, inexperienced players. Remember, Chopper and Magix were no one before this. They were just also runs and journeymen in the CIS. Like, actually, in some ways, the narrative for them would have been like MongolZ times 10. It would be like this up-and-coming CIS squads, like going deep, but not winning, because they wouldn't have had Shiro this. They probably wouldn't have won, is my suggestion, right? So anyway, the point I'm going to make is, if we come back now, I do feel like, I'm not going to say it's bad and like Chopper's like should be instantly fired, but I think Chopper and the structure of Spirit didn't survive to this season. I think they survived the first season. They were great. When they won Katowice, I came on this show and I went out of my way to say it isn't just Donk shooting people, as insane as he is. They actually are putting a real structure around him. They clearly set him up. They have people who go in with him. Even the way they have Shiro play with him is clearly like his job's to trade when he gets killed and stuff. You know, like if you looked at a lot of the things that Hallie and the coaching staff were clearly on the maps, like setting up all the fucking the flashes for an Anubis game or an Ancient Magic, all that shit, right? But I do think if you look in this season, it has mainly just been Donk. Like, it's been all about, like, Donk has some of the hard carries he's had to do are like the Nightmare Fuel old school simple ones where you do the hard carry and you still win by 2 rounds. And you're like, what, bro? That's supposed to be like we blow them out. Like, we just barely win when I have like the greatest performance ever. So Chopper and the structure, I just think have sort of like withered on the vine a little bit this season. Like, they've looked like that team where you look at the map pool, a lot of the strengths have disappeared. They're still good, but they're not bad. Like I said, never tell me this team is shit, but they aren't that like super threat that they were before. There's not even a go-to map, by the way, that if they pick, you know they're going to win. Everyone else had that. You had the NAVI Mirage, you had like, what, Dust 2 for Vitality, Spirit, probably Ancient for fucking GT. Pick whatever you want. We all know those maps that these teams were cracked on. And I also do think this is the team where, as soon as Plan A, which by the way literally involves Donk go kill 2 people, that's not even a strat right there, but as soon as Plan A falls apart, this looks like one of the teams that I think struggles. Like, this is the team where if you make them uncomfortable tactically, they just fall apart. Where's that? Contrast it with the NAVI team we just talked about. NAVI were unbelievable when they were down, when they were on the bad map, when they were behind in the game, when they're down in numbers. Spirit's the opposite for me. They were very fragile this season. And so you see the ceiling is still there. They have by the way, they could even fuck around and win this major as a dark horse. But the reason you wouldn't expect them to is when you think of them having a bad map, a game going against them, you don't see this is the team that does the epic comeback and battles back, you know. So I think I'll say ugly, because I'm not going to say it's bad. Like, I wouldn't fire him. Overall, he's had a good season. But I do think Chopper and the structure, it just looks to me like it's sort of, that's part of what got old for me at the end. It's gone off a bit for some reason.
I agree, because a lot of people kind of forget Chopper and Magic's where that Antwerp game against FaZe. Everyone remembers that epic fucking game, right? So Chopper is no stranger, and he had Dexter as well. Yeah, like, he's no stranger to playing those massive games, taking down the team of the year at that time. So now for me, it's like you come into Kato at the beginning of the year, you pick up this freak, you know, Donk, then you have Shiro and everything, and you get the win. Incredible run, fantastic. But my problem is, they won the spring finals as well, Red Blast, right? Even though they had a little bit of variance. For me, it's the supporting cast, because I look at Chopper. I think it still calls all right, but I agree with it's a little too stagnant. I think they've been figured out in quite a few maps by your G2s, for example, and all these guys. But man, I look at Magix and I look at Zontix, and just watching some of the movements from Magic's and in some of these duels which he has to take and whatnot, it just feels like, bro, I'm sure he can find someone better playing Face It from that part of the world, like easily. And if you say like, oh, he adds a lot more to the team and whatnot, I don't think he adds as much as fucking Shiro, Donk, and Chopper as a caller. Also, by the way, I'm not being as critical of Zontix because there have been times where he has come alive. This event, he had some very important games where he came alive. There's not one time where I can be like, yeah, Magic's really saved their asses there, guys. No. Apart from maybe a 1v3 clutch at Ancient, apart from that, it's just been like, man, you're being a liability. And that has been a common thread through all their failures this year. Sure, Donk might have a bad tournament. Sure, Shiro might have an off map here and there. Zontix could disappear a couple of maps, but he always bounce back. Chopper also can lead back. He's actually one of the more underrated fragging IGLs, I feel like. You know, when things are going good, he can really pop off as well. But I feel like Magic's... I said on desk as well, I feel like if Spirit don't win the major, which, you know, I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but if they don't win the major, I think Magic's is going to be cut by the end of the year. I think that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, because they're not winning the major, Bleh, Kyosuke is taking his spot next
So he's
year.
getting cut. Yeah, simple as that. You literally have that kid. And by the way, people are like, yeah, but his role's different. Fuck that. He's like 16, 17. He can play anything apart from calling on.
L plus ratio plus roles don't matter, so
never matters. Yeah.
No, Spirit. I'll say this actually. You know what? I disagree a little bit. I do disagree a little bit. I've seen different strats. I've seen some different strats at this major. I've seen them send out Donk in kind of a weird pressuring situation where he takes top mid of Mirage. He sits around, kind of like dances around the boxes, doesn't actually commit to any of the fights, and then Spirit go for a 4-man hit towards the other bomb site. So I've seen a little bit of some ingenuity from them. I've seen them change things up a little bit. So I think that's going to catch teams off by a little bit, because it isn't just a dedication of resources solely to get Donk into a entry fragging position. It's almost like the threat that Donk creates by being an active position draws so much attention from the teams that I think Spirit have the self-awareness now to realize they can use him almost as a decoy, which sounds kind of ridiculous given that he's also your win condition at the same time.
They tried it on Dust 2 against Furia, by the way. Didn't quite pan out.
So, no, I can't quite remember like the rounds that would be those, but I just remember watching the Mirage game versus another team. Gosh, it's just been so many matches. Maybe Heroic, where he just fights out top mid, and then that stuff just happens. So I've seen them try to change it. I think like I still don't believe in Chopper. Like I've kind of like gone down very quickly. The Katowice win made me believe much more than I should have in what he was doing as an in-game leader, along with the spring final. But since then, it's been a series of disappointments in terms of the mid-rounding. Like, the spring final, it actually looked like he was calling so well. Like, his mid-rounding on Anubis was good.
So why I said to me, it's the season. That was like the first season before, wasn't it? For that one, he was great. Like, everyone looked awesome then, but it feels, I don't know. Again, by the way, it's probably similar to what we said earlier as well. I'm sure people studied the fuck out of Spirit as well. Like, the more they studied them, the harder it got,
Exactly. And that's why, to bring it all the way back to G2, like how are you supposed to prep for this?
Everything comes back to G2 and Snacks, I know.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to prep against them? That, hey, they like to just do sight hits.
Okay, why is G2 Snacks it's your G2 Huxley, isn't it? It's like it's in your head in the same way the Huxley angle is.
Maui, just bring up Liquid instead. They're playing.
It's just so like it's so detrimental to. I realize we're back in the Stone Age. I do realize we're back in the Stone Age with Counter-Strike. That actually it is like watching teams back in the early 2010s. Actually, not even where you don't even need the best tactics. Like very games never beat NIP for that reason. You know, like they just had worse players. They had better tactics, but they had worse players. True. I'm realizing we're living in that reality once again. That G2 has the better players and they have the worst tactics. It is what it is. It's dumbing the game down. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
You say that while Spirit literally has Donk, but okay.
And they won't beat G2 because G2 have Nico, Donk counter. They have MonteCristo, better than Shiro and more impactful. They have Hunter, 10 times the player Magic's will ever be. And they have MauLBS. What, am I comparing?
He's better than Zontix, come on. Yeah, he is.
Get a grip.
Okay, Maui, who's a better IGL?
Oh, Apex is a better IGL?
No. Snacks versus...
Chopper.
Chopper.
Versus Chopper? Through the year, I would have taken Chopper. Through the last 6 months, I would actually take Snacks. Just because.
I would just say for me, that's a Sophie's choice type scenario. Except Loki, I don't give a fuck about either of them.
they're the worst two IGLs in this.
Yeah, basically, in my analogy here, I'm not picking which one I want to die. I just don't know which one I want to live, and if I can live with, if I can suffer the consequences of that. So
yeah, I take Kixan. I take Kerrigan. I take Lexi B. I guess he's not here. I take Shuhei. I take Blitz.
Blitz, yeah.
By the way, there's another one. Let's make sure Blitz goes in all IGL conversations now. He's earned it. He's earned it completely. Yeah.
This conversation, I think, does say something crazy. It's like Blitz is the hardest fragging IGL we have
it's probably
right
true.
now.
It's probably true.
I don't think he is the hardest fragging, but he is a top 3.
He's not the hardest fragging, but if combination of calling and fragging, he might be the complete
there you
picture,
go. There you go.
I can't say hardest fragging when Twist exists.
Exactly.
Okay.
Twist
has been calling as well as Blitz.
But he's been doing this longer with lesser support, lesser experience than Twist has, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I can't think of anyone else who does that. Think about it at that level. There is no one actually. MongolZ CS on top.